Welcome into the Steelers Talk live show presented by Prize Picks. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. Thank you guys so much for joining me here today to talk some ball. Less than a week away from the start of the 2026 NFL Draft, of course, being hosted by the beautiful city of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And it's a big draft for the Pittsburgh Steelers, obviously. 12 draft picks. 5 in the top 100. There's a lot of speculation about a potential trade-up. We'll talk a little bit about that today. But we got a bunch of great stuff planned for you guys on today's live program. First up, we're going to be telling you guys about the latest Steelers news and rumors. We did get an update on the Aaron Rodgers situation from Tom Pelissero that I don't think many Steelers fans are going to love. But then we'll get into my perfect Steelers mock draft this year, making all of my picks for all 7 rounds of everything that I would love to see the Pittsburgh Steelers do this next week here during the NFL Draft, my ideal situation there. Then we'll answer your questions, as we always do, on our second live show of the week on the weekly Steelers Talk Live Mailbag. This will probably be the last mailbag we do before the start of the NFL Draft. So if you have any questions leading up to the draft on these receiver prospects, on these guard prospects, on anything regarding the Pittsburgh Steelers, it doesn't have to be about the draft. I'm happy to answer any and all questions for you guys. If you want to get on the show today for a chance to get on the show for free, you guys can put your question into the live chat alongside hashtag Steelers. So essentially how that works, guys, is you have to put hashtag Steelers in your comment. If you don't do so, our producer is not going to be able to see you. Or you guys can super chat to guarantee your question gets on the show today. That's the only way to guarantee your question gets on the show. So if you really want your question answered, send in a super chat of any dollar amount. Doesn't matter the amount, $2, $5, $10. It really doesn't matter to me. If you guys have a question you really want answered, make sure you guys super chat. And I want to see who the real ones are down there in the chat. We already have over 220 people watching live right now. A lot of people ready to talk some Steelers football, so spam those me's. You guys know what to do, man. We do it at the beginning of every single live show. I want to see who the real ones are right now. We got Ali the Reaper. We got Alex Farm Kid. We've got Lazy. We got Robbie. We've got Eugene. We got Czar Craig. We got my lovely fiance Cassie Voth here as always. We got Kevin Reed. We've got Matt. We've got Michael. They're going so fast I can't read them here, guys. We got Lazy, got Matt, Stealthy, Sup Dog. We've got Mr. Deadhead, Kevin Reed, Trent, Jay Terrell, or Jay Terrell, however you say that. We've got Stealthy. We've got a good crew, man. I can't wait to talk some ball with you guys this evening to kick off your weekend. It's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to get to your questions, especially because the mailbag before the draft is usually really, really fun. So continue to get those me's down there in the comment section if you haven't already. And if you guys want to skip the line and get your question on the show today, if you have something you want me to answer immediately, make sure you guys send in a Venmo at Jack-Sperry on Venmo or at Captain Jack Rabbit on PayPal. The reason why Venmo and PayPal questions get to skip the line is because we get to keep more of the proceeds, right? I think YouTube takes like a 30% cut and Apple takes another 10% of all the super chats that come in here. With Venmo and PayPal, we get to keep more of those proceeds. So if you guys want more of your donation dollars to go to us here at Steelers Talk and you want your question answered first and skip the line, make sure you guys send in a Venmo at Jack-Sperry or at Captain Jack Rabbit on PayPal. So really do appreciate your guys' support. Now, before we introduce our producer for today, Ponzi is actually out of town. I want to tell you guys about our presenting sponsor today at Prize Picks, America's #1 sports picks app. Of course, they are presenting sponsor here today. And with playoff basketball finally here, there's no better time to cash in during the playoffs this year. The Prize Picks app is really easy to use. You just pick more than or less than on a few player stats and lock in your lineup. If you're a hoops guy, you can go with points, rebounds, assists, blocks, or three-pointers. Or if you're more of a seam head and you like baseball a little bit more, you could choose hits, home runs, or strikeouts. One thing that I absolutely love is the new social feeds feature where you can share Prize Picks with your friends and copy lineups with a single click. You can actually follow me on the app at CSperry to see all of my lineups. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to receive $50 in lineups. That's code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to get an extra $50 in lineups with Prize Picks today. Click the link in the comments and description to download the app, and a big thank you to Prize Picks for sponsoring tonight's live show. All right, man, so let's bring on our producer today. I don't think you've ever done a Steelers Talk live show, have you? He says he doesn't know. I don't think he has. He's currently trying to get his camera up on screen here, guys, so give him a second here. But make sure you guys get your questions in. We'll get our producer up on screen here momentarily. We do have a live poll going on in the live chat room, guys. 187 votes. The question is, what position will Pittsburgh take in round 1 this year? Offensive line, wide receiver, safety, or other? Right now, it doesn't seem like safety or other is getting a ton of the vote. 54% say offensive line, 41% say wide receiver. Okay, so for me, guys, you guys know that I would love to get a receiver, but I'd also like to get an offensive guard. I do think the first 2 picks in the draft will be guard and wide receiver. I think right now, Omar Khan, knowing the con artist, he probably is going to prefer the trench player over the skill player, especially when you already have 2 good receivers on the team in DK Metcalf and Michael Pittman Jr. So I guess we're just going to have to see what they do next Thursday. But here is our producer today. Mr. Reed Barkus is here. Everyone, welcome Reed to the show. Thanks for stepping in here today,
yeah, no
Reed.
problem. No problem at all. I'm actually, it's funny how I was walking into work today, and Brett was like, so Xavier's not here.
Yeah, Brett's our boss,
Brett
by
is
the way.
our boss, yes. Xavier's not here. How about some Steelers today? And I was like, hey, I haven't worked with Sperry in a while. Very excited, very excited.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have a good time today. Barkus in Xavier's chair today. And, you know, he's actually our Tampa Bay Buccaneers host, guys.
Yes.
You guys watched our live mock draft. If you were there yesterday, he was making all the picks for the Tampa Bay Bucks. How did you think you did yesterday?
I think I did all right. So I took in my first one. I took at pick 15. I took Keldrick Folk, the edge rusher out of Auburn. It was between him and Akeem Mesidor. Akeem Mesidor has been mocked to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers
a lot.
I talked about him already. So I kind of wanted to switch it up a little bit. Akeem Mesidor is going to be a 25-year-old rookie. I don't care about that, but then at the same time, you do a little bit. I like Keldrick Folk. He's got a good head on his shoulders. He's aggressive. He plays well. So I went with him. And then my second pick, I went with Anthony Hill Jr., the linebacker out of Texas. I like the big thing I like about Anthony Hill Jr. is he's sideline to sideline. He can play very fast. And he also has a good head on his shoulders as well. And I feel like losing Levante David right now, the defense for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is very old.
Yep.
You bring in Anzalone, you bring in Christian Roseboom, Al-Qadim Muhammad. These are all guys who are not going to be there in the next 2 or 3 years. So
Got to get younger.
And you got to bring in a guy who feels like you can lead the team, and I think Anthony Hill Jr. could be that guy. He also brings a little bit on special teams as well.
Cool. Yeah.
And I took Max Clare with my 3rd-round pick.
Now, just so you guys know, I was getting a lot of flack for not trading up in the first round.
Oh, yeah.
I told Reed, you want to do a trade at 15? And he tells me, I already have a trade with somebody, and then he doesn't trade, and I was like, I was pissed because Marshall ended up trading up ahead of me for Venga Iwane, the guy that I wanted, and I tried telling my folks here, I tried to trade up, but you wouldn't let me.
So I did have a trade in place with the Texans at 28.
Now, you don't want to
trade back.
You don't want to make deals with Chugs.
I know. Jeremy Chugs, I didn't want to make the it was a deal contingent on Kenyon Sadiq still being there
and he wasn't.
At 15 because honestly, I was probably going to backdoor Chugs and as soon as
pause.
Sorry. Pause. I was going to basically cuz I like Kenyon Sadiq. You lose a playmaker in Mike Evans, you gain one back with Kenyon Sadiq. I think I was going to sort of pull the rug from Jeremy and say, hey, deal's off right at the last minute and take Kenyon Sadiq because he wants Kenyon Sadiq.
But he went 13. But he went 13 to the Rams. So trade was off. I went with best player available at that point. Keldrick Folk I thought was best player available because you need an edge for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and that's what we did. Fair enough. Let's get to some super chats here, shall we? If you want to put yourself in the little box up top, you can contribute if you'd like. First one I think is going to be coming in from my man Bernard. Is that correct?
That is.
All right. So Bernard, you'll find out, Reed, that Bernard has a lot of questions specifically around Aaron Rodgers. So
I love it.
So this probably won't be the last that we see of him. Reed is currently working on getting Bernard's super chat up on screen. Let me see if I can find it so I can just read it Yeah, he says, I'm a little annoyed at Aaron Rodgers at this point. He's earned the right to take his time, but it shouldn't take this long to decide to play football or not. And that's exactly why I think Rodgers likes this process. He did this same exact thing last year where, he kind of had this elongated process. And he was like, you know what, man? Like, if you guys want to go in a different direction and you don't want to go through this process with me, fine. But at the end of the day, like, I'm interested in playing at this point, but my mind could change. I want some time to really make sure I want to play this year. Are you okay waiting around for a little bit? And it seems like the Steelers certainly are. I'll say this, man. Whatever Rodgers is telling him in these meetings or these phone calls that McCarthy is apparently having with him like every single day now, I mean, you don't call the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers at least twice a week if you plan on retiring, I think is kind of the thing here. It was a very similar situation last year with Mike Tomlin, where Tomlin said during training camp, he said it on the Pivot podcast, that he knew Rodgers was coming. Long before he ended up making the quote-unquote decision to sign with the Steelers. I think Rodgers has pretty much made his decision. It's just he wants to be 100% sure he wants to dedicate his life, another half year of his life, to playing football, and I don't think that he wants to make that decision too early. Like, I think the last thing that he wants is to sign a contract and make a decision in March and then get to June and be like, you know what, I'm not really feeling it. I want to retire. And, that would really be pulling the rug out from underneath the Pittsburgh Steelers. So
I agree.
I think that's probably where his mind is at. He just wants to be 100% sure he wants to play. Now, the fact that he's calling McCarthy like twice a week tells me, yeah, I'm planning on playing, all this different stuff. I want to, communicate with you about what I want in the offense, kind of weapons that I like, all this different stuff. I'm sure they're having those conversations, just like Mike and Aaron had last year during the offseason. It's just a matter of when he feels comfortable locking in for another season. And at this point, I would say we probably don't get a decision by the draft, unfortunately. And I honestly don't think we're going to get a decision until mid-May at the very earliest at this point, because OTAs for the Steelers begin on May 18th, okay? And that starts on a Monday. So it wouldn't surprise me if like the Thursday or Friday before that, so middle of May, maybe he wants to do OTAs this year. He didn't attend OTAs last year. Maybe he does this year. But last year he just signed a few days before mandatory minicamp. I think that's probably the latest that he decides to sign, because that's when he did the signing last year. Hopefully he signs in May, but I think at this point we're still going to have to wait a little bit longer. And, it's frustrating as a fan because we want to know, right? But at the end of the day, it's not going to matter that much whether Rodgers signs in March or whether he signs in mid-May or early June. He's going to be ready to play week one. So as long as he's the starting quarterback and the Steelers don't get got here, it's not going to make any difference whether he re-signed in February or whether he, signed in June, right? So that's kind of my take on it. Next super chat here, Mr. Reed from O-Dubs, a $5 super chat, says, Jack, why do you think the Steelers didn't use a top 30 visit on Omar Cooper Jr., Jordan Tyson, or even Casey Concepcion? Well, I think this year part of the reason is that they already know Omar Cooper Jr. very well, because new wide receiver coach Adam Henry was actually at Indiana when he recruited Omar Cooper Jr. To Bloomington, so he knows him very well. Also, Frank Cignetti Jr. is one of the offensive assistants here in Pittsburgh. That's Curt Cignetti's brother, of course, the head coach of the Indiana Hoosiers. So it seems like we have the connections to kind of know what Omar Cooper Jr. is all about without having to use a top 30 visit on him. Jordan Tyson, obviously we have a connection to Hines Ward, who was his wide receiver coach at Arizona State. So I'm sure that, the Steelers have had a conversation with Hines about Jordan Tyson, and they've probably heard a lot of really good things. Casey Concepcion, there's probably not a great reason why they didn't have a top 30 visit with him. But the fact that they did have a top 30 visit with Denzel Boston probably tells me that if the board falls and like the two options at receiver for them are Casey Concepcion or Denzel Boston, I think they would probably lean Boston. All right, that doesn't necessarily mean that like if KC falls and like the Steelers trade up for a receiver in round 2, I could see Concepcion being one of the guys they'd be interested in. But at this point, I would say the chances that KC Concepcion ends up being a Pittsburgh Steeler are probably less than some of these other potential round 1 wide receivers. Michael coming in with a $1 super chat. Appreciate you, Michael. Thank you so much for that $1 super chat. Is that the last one that we've gotten? Yep. Okay, so continue to get those super chats in, guys. Again, hashtag Steelers to get your questions on the mailbag today. Super chats get questions automatically submitted, so make sure you guys get those super chats in. We'll be kind of breaking those down in between cuts as well. But let's get into our first segment here of the day, which is going to be the latest Steelers news and rumors. All right, so again, guys, make sure you click that subscribe button, click that thumbs up icon to kick off our show here today. Super chat to get your question up on screen and on the mailbag here today, and whenever Reed has us ready to go into our first segment here, we will go right into the news and rumors of the day. We got a lot to talk about on today's show. We got a new Aaron Rodgers update from Tom Pelissero, Brian Angelico, and Patrick Graham, the new coordinators here in Pittsburgh, took the podium in Pittsburgh today, breaking down their visions for the scheme on both sides of the ball. We got a lot to talk about on today's program. So, Reed, are we ready to get things going? Can we do the intro? Send it through and then do the. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. I got you. Okay. So that's what we're gonna do. All right. So without further ado, let's show it. Let's show the first graphic. A little sneak peek here. And with that, let's get into our first segment of the day. We have a lot to talk about today here on Steelers Talk as Tom Pelissero has shared his latest Aaron Rodgers update that I don't think a lot of Steelers fans are going to be too happy about. We'll talk about that at the top of today's program. Then another quarterback rumors here. Could Mason Rudolph get traded during the NFL draft or shortly after if the Steelers draft a quarterback in the middle rounds of the draft this year? I got my answer coming up later in the show. Also, there's a report from Todd McShay that the Pittsburgh Steelers are quote-unquote eyeing offensive tackle in round one. I'll tell you whether or not I buy that later in the show as well. Then we'll finish up today's show with my thoughts on Brian Angelico and Patrick Graham hitting the podium today in Pittsburgh, breaking down their visions for the scheme here in Pittsburgh in their first year as OC and DC here in the Burgh. Now, before we get into the news and rumors today, make sure you guys go check out our merch game here. You guys can go to chatsports.com/Pittman. That is Pittman with one T, like the acronym for the Steelers here. You guys can get this T-shirt today. You got the Steelers Talk logo in neon in the background. You've got Pittman making a nice catch there. If you guys want to get one of these T-shirts today, they're $29.99 on our website right now. So chatsports.com/Pittman is the link. It's down there in the comments and description for you guys to click on if you would like to make a purchase today. All right, so now let's get into the Rodgers update, which is not terrific news. We were hoping that to hear from Aaron Rodgers before the NFL draft, whether or not he was going to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year. But according to Tom Pelissero, he said on the Rich Eisen show this week that there is quote-unquote no anticipation that Aaron Rodgers will make an announcement before the NFL draft this year. I have no anticipation Aaron Rodgers is going to announce anything prior to the draft. I know that Art Rooney had indicated that he hoped it would be around then. I've not been told that. I don't think that's really a deadline from the Steelers' perspective. The important thing for Pittsburgh is having Rodgers there when OTAs kick off in mid-May, so he's out there on the grass actually practicing with the team. I don't think the Steelers have been told to expect an answer by the draft. Right now, I have no reason to believe that's coming. So that essentially means, guys, that Aaron won't be there for the voluntary minicamp that's going to be happening next week, or at least we're not expecting him to be there. Like, who knows, maybe something crazy happens this weekend where he'll sign a contract and he'll be there Monday through Wednesday when the team does their voluntary minicamp. And by the way, the team is allowed on the grass, and they are allowed to do some practice stuff, some real football stuff next week because they have a new head coach. So, I would say at this point, because of Pelissero's reporting, I would not expect Rodgers to be there, and I think that once again we'll be waiting for an Aaron Rodgers decision until after the NFL draft. And the reason why I think that is because I think Rodgers liked last year's setup. It was kind of well reported that he felt kind of rejuvenated after the season last year. I think part of that was he did take a pretty long break from football in preparation for the 2025 season, and he enjoyed, spending the time how he wanted to in the offseason and not getting completely grilled for being under contract contract and not showing up to OTAs like he has in the past. He kind of liked, having the freedom to either play or not play and kind of take his time to kind of make sure that the decision that he ended up coming to in early June last year was the right one. And it kind of seems like Rodgers is, goes full balls to the wall when the season is here, and like when it's training camp, when it's time to focus on football, he is all in. But when it's the off season, he's somebody that really likes to enjoy his off season. And now that he's signing all these 1-year deals, he has the freedom to be able to not sign until he wants to. And if the Steelers are willing to go along for that ride, they're going to do that, and that's exactly what they're doing at this point. So predict it for me down there in the comment section. Will Aaron Rodgers sign before June this year? Of course, last year he signed in early June. Will he do the same this year, or will he sign in May this year? Type SM if you think he signs in May, or type JR if you think he signs in June, or if you think he retires. This will be the pinned comment on today's show. So in just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our presenting sponsor. While I tell you about our sponsor today, give me an SM or a JR down there in the comment section. And with that, our show is brought to you by Prize Picks today, guys, America's #1 sports picks app. With playoff basketball finally here, there's no better time to cash in during the playoffs this year. The Prize Picks app is super easy to use. You just pick more than or less than on a few player stats and lock in your lineup. If you're a hoops guy, you can go with points, rebounds, assists, blocks, or three-pointers. If you're more of a baseball guy, you can choose hits, home runs, or strikeouts. One thing that I absolutely love about the Prize Picks app is the new social feeds feature, where you can share Prize Picks with your friends and copy lineups with a single click. You can actually follow me on the app at @CSperry to see all of my lineups. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to receive $50 in lineups on the Prize Picks app today. That's code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to get an extra $50 in lineups with Prize Picks today. Click the link in the comments and description to download the app, and a big thank you to Prize Picks for sponsoring today's edition of Steelers Talk. Now, the reason why Aaron Rodgers probably likes, quote-unquote, his process is because he doesn't have to participate in any of those team workouts during the offseason that he has advocated in the past, where he's said in the past, we shouldn't even have an offseason program. We should just get started at training camp. So, of course, now that he has the freedom to not sign until essentially training camp, he's going to do that, right? So that's part of the reason. And I also think part of the reason why he's kind of waiting here is because it gives him more time to make sure he wants to play next season. Like, the last thing I think Rodgers wants to do is commit to another season in March, and then he gets to June, and he's like, you know what, I'm not really feeling it. I'm going to retire. I don't think that is something that he wants to do. I think that he feels like that would be pulling the rug out from the team. But I think at this point, the team is clearly committing to him. If he retires at this point, regardless, it's pulling the rug out from under the Pittsburgh Steelers. But at this point, guys, I could see him wait until mandatory minicamp again. That's when he decided last year, or announced it last year. I think, Mike Tomlin made it pretty clear last offseason that he knew Rodgers was coming long before he made his quote-unquote decision. I think something similar is going on with Mike McCarthy, who said at the NFL owners meetings that he's having weekly conversations with at this point. So I don't think that happens unless Rodgers is heavily implying he's going to play this year. It's just he wants to do it on his timeline and on his terms. And I know that annoys people, but it definitely doesn't bother the Pittsburgh Steelers. But the next date I would say to watch out for, guys, when it comes to a Rodgers quote-unquote decision, it's probably the start of OTAs on May 18th, which is a Monday. So maybe, the week prior to that, on a Thursday or Friday, he says, I'm flying to Pittsburgh to go through these OTAs that we have in the middle of the offseason because I want to throw with my guys, all this different stuff. But like I said, guys, it really wouldn't surprise me at this point if he does exactly what he did last year and signs in early June, which would suck for me because I'm getting married on June 6th. All right, now we get to Mason Rudolph, who might be on thin ice here, as the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette's Ray Filipaldo believes that Mason could be traded this offseason as early as next weekend during the NFL draft if the Steelers draft a rookie quarterback to pair with Will Howard and potentially Aaron Rodgers. And if Pittsburgh drafts a mid-round QB, man, I got to admit it, I see it. I could see them parting ways with Mason Rudolph, who's more of like a mid-level backup guy at this point. And apparently this team really likes Will Howard, so if they believe in him and they think that he can be a legitimate QB2 to Rodgers, if and when he decides to come back and play for this team, then maybe they would consider trading Mason for a late day 3 type of pick. And if Pittsburgh adds another young quarterback to this room and Rodgers is coming back, there's only so much room in the quarterback room, guys. I don't think they're going to keep 4 quarterbacks on the roster unless like it's a Taylon Green who's going to be more of like a hybrid Taysom Hill tight end quarterback type of guy. I don't think they're going to have 4 true quarterbacks on the roster. Like, I think they'll maybe keep one on the practice squad, but if they bring in a rookie that they really like, and they also have Will Howard, a young quarterback that they like, there's got to be an odd man out in this group if Aaron Rodgers returns. And I do think that that guy would probably be Mason Rudolph. Now, Pittsburgh might be able to get something like a 7th-round pick or a late-round pick swap for Rudolph, but like I said, man, Rudolph's a mid-level backup quarterback, and I don't think there's a lot of teams looking to trade draft picks for mid-level backup quarterbacks unless they really like that backup. So with that said, man, I don't think Pittsburgh necessarily has to draft a quarterback this year. I think that the Steelers have really laid it on thick this year, or they don't feel like they have to take one, but if they can get one for a good value, they will take one. So, Mason Rudolph might be watching the NFL draft pretty closely here, especially once we get into Saturday or Friday and Saturday, days in 2 and 3 of the NFL draft. So predict it for me down there in the comments section. Will Mason Rudolph be on the final 53-man roster this year for the Pittsburgh Steelers? Give me a yes or a no down there in the comment section. Now we can shift our focus here to Todd McShay from The Ringer, who claims that the Steelers are quote-unquote looking real hard at offensive tackle in round 1. Of course, McShay is an NFL draft analyst for The Ringer, and this is what he had to say about this topic. I think both Pennsylvania teams, Philly and the Steelers, are looking really hard at offensive tackle in the first round. Now, for me personally, guys, I don't know if I'm necessarily buying this quote-unquote info from Todd McShay, okay? He's somebody that I think he's definitely somebody that I think doesn't have the greatest information in the world on the Pittsburgh Steelers. In the past, he has said a lot of different things here that haven't necessarily come true. He has said things with a lot of conviction that ended up being just straight up wrong in the past when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers' first-round draft strategy. And I think that his info isn't that great. I think that a lot of these teams view McShay, who has a very large national platform that a lot of people listen to, as kind of a useful idiot that they can kind of get information out there to. And I think the Steelers have definitely done that in the past. A little bit of evidence here. Let's take a look at what Todd had to say about last year, where apparently the Steelers were so interested in Shedeur Sanders. He said, quote, "Based on conversations I'm having with people in the league, there's a growing sense that Sanders will be the pick at 21 to the Steelers. As I've said multiple times over the past couple of weeks, Mike Tomlin and Sanders did hit it off during the pre-draft process. Any reports to the contrary are false." And of course, Pittsburgh ended up passing on Shedeur Sanders not once, not twice, not thrice, but 4 freaking times, and ended up taking a quarterback in round 6 and Will Howard instead. All right, if you think that's the only time he's been wrong, how about this one? Todd McShay said, "From everything I've heard, I think Mike Tomlin, this is the guy talking about Malik Willis in 2022. He really wants him." And of course, as we all know, once we got to pick number 20 there, we ended up taking a quarterback, but it wasn't Malik Willis. It was, of course, Kenny Pickett out of Pittsburgh here, who ended up being the draft selection for the Pittsburgh Steelers that year. So McShay is somebody that I think the Steelers have certainly, maybe leaked some information to in the past, and McShay has been more than happy to put that out on his podcast, and I think that the Steelers have done a really good job with these kind of smoke screens in the past. So whenever McShay says something about, the Steelers are trying to do this in the first round, I'm always very, very skeptical of it, as much as I respect McShay as an analyst, but as a news guy and as a reporter, I don't think necessarily he has a bunch of great scoops. But also, man, Pittsburgh hasn't shown a ton of interest in round 1 offensive tackles this year, at least not like true offensive tackle guys. You guys can take a look at their list of guys that are expected to go in round 1 and that they've had either a top 30 visit with or a combine formal with. The list includes Spencer Fano from Utah, Caden Proctor from Alabama, and Maxie Honicher from Arizona State. By the way, none of these guys got a combine formal and a top 30 visit. They had one or the other. Another thing to note about this list is that 2 of these guys can also play guard. And in fact, I would say Spencer Fano and Caden Proctor, the 2 guys I'm talking about here, are probably projected better as guards at the NFL level than as true offensive tackles. So for me, guys, I think guard is probably the much more likely destination here in round 1 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't think it's impossible they take O-line in round 1, but I don't really think that they're planning on on taking somebody that's going to be like their starting left tackle, for example. You guys can take a look at the current offensive line situation. I kind of like the situation at left tackle for the Steelers. I think Dylan Cook showed last year that he brings a good floor to the table for that position, but you also have the higher upside of Broderick Jones, who's still a former first-round pick. Obviously, he's coming off a really nasty neck injury, but he still has the long arms. He still has the incredible athleticism and movement ability. So I'm not giving up on Broderick Jones yet, but the big hole that needs to be filled here, is left guard with Brock Hoffman, who hasn't played a ton of left guard in his career. I think he's more of a swing interior lineman. I think that is the more important position to address with your first draft selection. It doesn't mean you can't take a developmental tackle that can maybe compete for the starting left tackle job maybe on day 2 or day 3, but I don't think it would be smart to spend this pick on a first-round tackle. And you guys can take a look here at the left guard prospects that the Steelers have shown interest in that are projected to be first-round caliber guys. Spencer Fano from Utah again, Venga Ioane from Penn State, and then Caden Proctor from Alabama. Something tells me that Omar Khan might be targeting this trio of players here, and if one of these guys falls to number 21, I think there's a really good chance they end up being the pick for the black and gold here in 2026. So what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comments section. Should offensive tackle be on the board for Pittsburgh in round 1? Type OT for yes, or type NOT for no, otherwise known as not. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. For me, I do not think that offensive tackle should be on the board, but if you take a tackle that you convert into a guard, perfectly fine with that. All right, so now let's talk about the coordinators here in Pittsburgh that took the podium today. It's really the first time we've heard from Brian Angelico, the new offensive coordinator here in Pittsburgh, and of course we heard from Patrick Graham as well. And Angelico had a very interesting answer today regarding the Steelers' offense and how it kind of compares to his time working for Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota. And he said it's quote-unquote the same as Minnesota's offense under Kevin O'Connell. I thought it was a very interesting quote here. Let's break down what he said. The concepts are the concepts. They may have changed the names, but it's a progression-based offense. It's all the same as it was in Minnesota. The origin of the West Coast is the same, but everyone's taking their spin off of it. Now, when you kind of put that quote into context there, I think Ange is right there and is right on the money here in terms of most teams in the NFL run the same concepts. Like everybody runs dagger and everyone runs, a deep cross and everyone runs, mesh and everyone runs spacing and everyone has the same kind of core concepts and everyone runs flood and all these different things, okay? Those concepts are the concepts, as Ange pointed out. However, the differences between guys like Mike McCarthy and people like Kevin O'Connell, Kyle Shanahan, Matt LaFleur, Sean McVay is the tendencies, okay, and the usage, right? Certain schemes like to use 12 and 13 personnel more, like Arthur Smith, for example, who's also in the quote-unquote West Coast family, okay, but it's more of the Shanahan style West Coast family as opposed to kind of the older school, getting the shotgun, quick passing, kind of the older school kind of West Coast that, Andy Reid was a part of and Sean Payton was a part of and Mike McCarthy was a part of and really still runs. So, these two, styles of offense, kind of like the McCarthy style of offense and the McVay-Shanahan kind of stuff, it's two really completely different offenses. So when Ange says it's the same, I completely disagree. I'm sure that he's going to bring in a lot of the stuff that they did do in Minnesota to help supplement Mike McCarthy's kind of baseline scheme here. But, those teams in San Francisco and in LA and all these teams here in Green Bay, they go under center a lot and they have very condensed formations and a lot of motion. Mike McCarthy, not really somebody that uses a lot of motion, a lot of shotgun, a lot of spread stuff, puts a lot of stuff on the quarterback's plate. So, I think these two offenses are a lot different, but I see where he's coming from there when he says, they all run the same concepts. It's just a matter of putting our players in the best position to succeed. Then we get to Patrick Graham here, who said something that I really like today, guys, where he said that this defense is going to be playing a lot more big nickel this year, okay? And I think that this Steelers defense is actually built to be a big nickel defense. I actually tweeted about this about a month ago, and Jalen Ramsey actually liked the post. And, this is something that I've been advocating for a long time. It's something that the Seattle Seahawks do where they never get out of nickel because they've got, a big nickel player in Nick Emenwari who's like a big, kind of smaller, weak side linebacker that also happens to be a good slot corner. And we have one of those players here in Pittsburgh in Jalen Ramsey. You get Jaquan Brisker in this building for a reason, and that reason is to put Jalen Ramsey in that slot. And this was just absolute music to my ears to hear the defensive coordinator of the Pittsburgh Steelers, Patrick Graham, who you guys know I'm a giant fan of. I think that he's been a phenomenal coordinator throughout his career. He hasn't had the best talent to work with, but he's been somebody that's consistently gotten the most out of his teams. And I think that this roster is just built to be an absolutely dangerous big nickel team, just like the Seattle Seahawks, just like, you can argue the Philadelphia Eagles are with Cooper DeJean in the slot. We have one of those kind of dynamic, kind of big slot players in Jalen Ramsey, and he can be the straw that stirs the drink on defense here in Pittsburgh. Last year, because of injuries, he had to go play safety, and that kind of took away, his superpower, which is playing around the line of scrimmage, blitzing, being a run defender, and, putting him at free safety kind of took him away, from that equation. But you guys can take a look here at how the kind of defense will be structured. The way that Graham kind of describes it is 2-4-5. So that means 2 defensive linemen, 4 linebackers, and 5 secondary players. So the 2 defensive linemen he's talking about there are the 2 defensive tackles. The starters there are Cam Hayward and Derrick Harmon. Sebastian Joseph Day, Keanu Benton will be rotating in. But you got Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt as the defensive ends there. They're technically outside linebackers, but they're, by all intents and purposes, defensive ends because they're playing on the ball. But then you get to the linebackers here, and Patrick Queen will be the every down player. That is, if he's still on this team next year. Maybe they trade him, who knows? But at this current point, Patrick Queen will be the every down player. Peyton Wilson and Malik Harrison will rotate. Harrison will be the early down player. Peyton Wilson will be the coverage linebacker on passing downs. But then what really gives this team, in my opinion, its secret sauce is the big nickel secondary, where you've got 2 outside corners that are physical, can be run defenders, and they can play press man coverage. Joey Porter Jr. and Jamel Dean, both of them really, really good at that. Then you have Deshaun Elliott and Jaquan Brisker, 2 very good safeties, okay? But then Jalen Ramsey is there in the nickel where you can blitz him. You can use him as a run defender. He's one of the best tackling defensive backs in football still. He's almost 210 pounds, but, he's so instinctual out in coverage as well. So he can be one of the best slot corners in football while also pretty much acting like a, pseudo linebacker that's playing close to the line of scrimmage. And having a player like that will allow the Steelers to really live in this kind of formation where they don't have to play a bunch of 3-4 base defense, which Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin did ad nauseum. And it really put especially the linebackers in tough positions in coverage. If you just stick in nickel and you can defend the run from nickel, that's going to completely change that equation, and that could allow this defense to be one of the best in football. So I really do think that this is going to work. I'm a big believer in Patrick Graham, and I wouldn't be surprised here, guys, if this team goes from a good defense, which is what it was last year. It wasn't a great defense. It was an okay, good, above average defense. And I think that under Patrick Graham's leadership, this group, with as much talent as we have on this unit, could go from a great to elite in one season here. And, that's exactly what the Philadelphia Eagles did 2 years ago. That's exactly what the Seattle Seahawks did last year. And, we saw the results for those 2 football teams. Now, I'm not guaranteeing a Super Bowl championship here in Pittsburgh, but I can tell you this right now. If the Steelers are going to win a Super Bowl next year, it's not going to be because of Aaron Rodgers. It's not going to be about the offense. It's going to be because this defense returns the legendary status and takes us to the promised land. And I think we have some of the horses in here that could potentially take us there. So some really cool stuff here to finish up today's show. The team announced this week that there is going to be a slate of guest pickers for the Pittsburgh Steelers at the 2026 NFL Draft this year. Jerome Bettis, the Bus himself, will be there making a round 2 selection, I believe it is. And Joey Porter Sr. will be there as well. Joey Porter Jr. will be making a pick, and John Stallworth as well. So some big-time Steelers legends and, somebody that's probably going to get paid a big contract this year by the Steelers will all be there. And they'll be making the picks during round 2 and round 3, so the day 3 selections. Or day 2 selections, I should say, for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, make sure you guys get down there in the comments section, because I know today was a bit of a longer one. We had a lot to talk about today. So if you made it to the end of today's show, I want to show you guys some love. Type Real One in all caps down there in the comments section if you made it to the end of the video today. And that'll be it for today's edition of Steelers Talk by Chat Sports, presented by Prize Picks. Make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. I greatly appreciate your guys' support. And until next time, guys, here we go, Steelers. First segment in the books here, ladies and gentlemen. Coming up next, my perfect Steelers mock draft. All right, this is one of my favorite videos that I do all year long. Read where I take a look at this draft class. I've done hours of film study research on these Jits, and I'm ready to say what my best ideal kind of situation would be for the Steelers. Now,
I was going to say, Sperry, you are one of the most intricate draft analysts that I've been around. You just the tiniest stuff is what you look at. I think that's so important when you're analyzing guys who, yeah, you can look at the tape, but what really makes them tick is what gets me going of why would this guy be good in the NFL? Mm-hmm. And I think you do a really good job at that.
I appreciate that, brother.
Yeah,
Man, I'm really proud of this mock draft that I put together today. Is it necessarily realistic? No, but a perfect situation is not necessarily realistic. Now, everything that I have in the draft could happen, all right? But the idea that all of these things are going to line up perfectly for the Steelers the way I have it lined up, it's not going to happen the way that I'm laying out here. I just want to tell you guys, what would be my ideal situation here. And all these different things that could happen for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year. And it's just one of my favorite videos to do throughout the draft season. By the way, guys, next week I'll have my final predictive mock draft, so I will kind of be trying to predict what the Steelers actually do in the NFL draft this year. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that because it's going to be coming out next Wednesday. We might even do a live show to unveil it. That might be something that's a good idea, so keep your eye on the notifications there. But also, again, guys, we're going to be having our mailbag coming up here, so if you have a question, hashtag Steelers or Super Chat to get your question on the show. And we got some Super Chats to catch up on here before we get into my perfect mock draft. You want to read this one, Reed?
Yeah, I can read this one. Bernard said, since he's a Bucs fan, can you ask him, can Rodgers Steelers win a Super Bowl like Brady's Bucs did for Super Bowl 43 against the Kansas City Chiefs?
So Brady was 43 when he won the Super Bowl in Tampa.
Was that because that was Super Bowl 50?
I don't know what number it was, but
it was in 2020.
But Rodgers is turning 43 this year.
So I will say I have the stats up here. Sperry, can you tell me the similarities between the Bucs beating the Chiefs and the Eagles beating the Chiefs?
I mean, the defense was just crazy for both of them. And that's what it is.
That's what it is, Mr. Bernard. You have a good defense, you take a guy like Brady or like Rodgers who have amazing talent between the eyes, arm talent's there, they know how to run an offense. The defense is what comes to it because they suffocated Patrick Mahomes. Whoever you're going up against in the Super Bowl, that quarterback usually very, very, very good.
Yep.
So if you can shut down the offense on the other team, like Sperry was saying before, Aaron Rodgers is not going to win you the Super Bowl.
Nope.
Tom Brady, he was a big part of why the Bucs got to the Super Bowl. But that specific game, yes, he played very well.
Yep.
But the defense is why they won. They shut down Patrick Mahomes. He could not win. I mean, Levante David, Devin White that game as well, had that pick. Yeah. Ndamukong Suh was on that team. Jason Pierre-Paul. They all had that. That was a defense
Antoine
where they just
Jr.
constructed it, and then they ran it back the next year, and then injuries hurt them, and that's how they lost. They could have gone. They could have gone.
They were very good the next year.
They could have gone back to back.
Brady played pretty well. His final season wasn't great, but he played really well his second season in Tampa. But here's something that
I will say, yes, if your defense plays up to par and you got that big nickel and Patrick Graham brings you to the promised land, I think he can.
If it's an elite defense, okay? If it's Seattle's defense from last year, if it's the Eagles' defense from 2 years ago, those teams showed you don't need a superstar quarterback to win it all. Jalen Hurts, I know you're a Hurts guy, Reed, but I think he's borderline top 10. I think that's fair to say. He's not a superstar. All right, he wasn't the reason. He's not the reason why they won.
No. He's a good part about it.
Yeah, sure.
And he's going to win the MVP because QB is that's an MVP type of Super Bowl MVP award a little bit. Quarterbacks get looked at first, and then you look. Sam Darnold played well last year, but it was Kenneth Walker who basically broke that game out.
I would say there's kind of two kind of philosophies for trying to go and win a Super Bowl. All right, number one way is the preferred way, which is to have an elite quarterback, surround him with as much talent as you possibly can, and then have that quarterback lead you to the promised land. That's what the Chiefs are in right now. That's what the Bills are in right now. That's what the Ravens are in right now. Exactly. That's what they're trying to do. But that's in the mode that they're in. But then there's other teams that are like, okay, how do we have an elite supporting cast, a really good defense, great weapons around a good quarterback? I think it's impossible to win a Super Bowl with a bad quarterback. You got to have a good quarterback at the very bare minimum to win a Super Bowl. And if you're going to win a Super Bowl with just a good quarterback, not a truly great quarterback or an elite one, you got to have that elite supporting cast. The thing about the Steelers situation is that they want to continue to try and win now and try and make a push for a Super Bowl. There is no options available to them this offseason, even before free agency, where they were going to get a quarterback that was going to be great, that was going to, be that top 5, top 6 level quarterback that you can get behind and that he can take you to the Super Bowl. No, the Steelers' way to potentially compete for a title this year is to have a competent starting quarterback with excellent offensive infrastructure around him, excellent protection, excellent receiving weapons, excellent run game, and then you also give him a great to an elite defense, and you allow that quarterback to kind of drive the bus, so to speak, like Jalen Hurts did 2 years ago, like Sam Darnold did this past year. And, that's why I want Aaron Rodgers back, because I truly believe that with Patrick Graham coming in here, his scheme is going to be a huge upgrade compared to what we had with Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin, where I respect them, especially Tomlin, but their scheme was very outdated. It was a lot of traditional 3-4 fronts. It would put the linebackers in really tough positions in coverage because it would consistently ask them to cover slot receivers, especially in trips, and it just put these defenders in a tough spot to succeed. They would miscast players like Keanu Benton. They tried to make him a true nose tackle. He's not a nose tackle, right? So I think Patrick Graham is going to do a much better job using the personnel in the way that they're supposed to be used. And I think by going to this kind of modern big nickel kind of look of a defense, bringing in Sebastian Joseph Day to be your early down nose tackle, all these different things, bringing in Jamel Dean, who's a really good man-to-man corner. I think they're going to play a lot of man. They're going to play in your face. They're going to play tough. They're going to throw exotic looks at you with Jalen Ramsey and Deshaun Elliott blitzing and Patrick Queen blitzing and, dropping TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith out in the coverage because that's one of the more underrated parts of their game. I think that this Steelers defense is going to be one of the most fun defenses to watch in football next year. And the reason why I'm so optimistic for the Steelers next year, guys, is not even necessarily me thinking Aaron Rodgers is going to return to MVP form. I just think Rodgers, especially with a better offensive play caller and better weapons around him, is more than good enough that with an elite defense, with the really good running back duo we have, with improved weapons like I talked about, that he could give you a shot, and he gives you your best shot to go on a run. I'm not guaranteeing Aaron Rodgers wins us a Super Bowl this year if he comes back. I'm saying he gives us the best chance.
I'd agree with that.
And there's no long-term quarterback options that I'm particularly jazzed about this year. Ty Simpson's tiny, has a lack of experience, and he's
You're not taking a rookie to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and exactly. If you're trying to win a Super Bowl, rookies never win them. So, and the same thing goes for quarterbacks that have never made the playoffs. It's very, very rare that a first-time playoff quarterback wins a Super Bowl, so that would include Will Howard this year, right? So it's not that I'm against Will Howard. I just think that this defense has a chance to be really special this year. Cam Hayward doesn't have a lot of time left before he retires. I want this team to get Cam Hayward a ring before he retires. I think Rodgers gives this team the best chance to go on a run this year. Does it guarantee it happens? No, but I do think that he gives us the best chance. All right, next one here. Bernard says, even though I'm a little annoyed at A-Rod, people need to stop saying he's holding the Steelers hostage. The Steelers signed up for this. Exactly. This is one of my pet peeves too. You can't be a volunteer and a hostage at the same time. The Steelers are saying, by all means, take your time. We want you back. Whenever you want to make a decision, we are here. The Steelers didn't have to do that, all right? They'd be held hostage by Rodgers if they didn't have any other options, right? But they did have options, and they still have options. They could draft Ty Simpson in the draft next week if they really want to and make him their day one starter. They could still trade for Mac Jones. There's still options out there. They're choosing not to go down that road because they want Rodgers back. It is a volunteer situation, not a hostage situation, to quote Mike Tomlin. Next one here, if we have more. Thomas with an $8 super chat. Appreciate you, Thomas. Says, if Jordan Tyson is on the board at 21 and we pick an offensive lineman that isn't Venga, I will probably throw my phone across the room. Well, if Spencer Fano or Caden Proctor is there, there's a chance that they would take them over Jordan Tyson. Here's the reason. Okay? I would say making sure you have a really good starting left guard next year is probably more important to the Steelers than having their number 3 wide receiver figured out. And also, this is kind of the second point that goes along with that. There's a lot of really good wide receiver prospects that can immediately be your wide receiver 3 that you can get on day 2 or even on early day 3 of the draft. You're not going to be able to get somebody that's going to be a really good starting guard in round 4 or round 3. Okay, you're just probably not going to do that. And Jordan Tyson has injury concerns. So, I would personally love Jordan Tyson at 21. First of all, I don't think he makes it there. He was working out at Arizona State today. He was running routes. Apparently, he looked really crisp, really good. And apparently, a lot of these teams are very high on him. I would be shocked if Jordan Tyson is available at 21 at this point. So I don't think you need to worry about this specific situation, Thomas. But, I think that if Venga Ioane, Spencer Fano, or Caden Proctor is there at the Steelers' selection at 21, I think one of those 3 is going to be the pick. Now, it's very possible, Reed, that all 3 of those guys are off the board. Proctor might be a top 6. Proctor might go to Cleveland at 6.
I looking back at our mock draft is funny because a lot of offensive linemen went early, especially to the Browns. And our Browns guy, he was building behind Shadur Sanders.
Yep.
That was what he was thinking of because he took 2 offensive linemen.
Yep.
So is that going to be how it goes in the NFL draft? I don't know. Are they going to maybe take a Ty Simpson in like the second round so they maybe go offense like Carnell Tate?
I don't know, man.
But I think I agree. I think there's a chance that those 3 guys are not there.
Yeah, and if they're not, that's when I think they shift to receiver. And whoever the best receiver on their board is at that point, that's who the pick is going to be. But I think that they're going to prioritize guard. I think you can make a good argument that they should prioritize receiver, but I think just knowing Omar Khan and how much he loves trench players and how big the need is at left guard right now, I don't think the Steelers, if they have an opportunity to take somebody they like at that position, I don't think they're going to pass on it.
Also, you trade for a guy like Michael Pittman. Mm-hmm. You're not going to get a guy like Tyson if he's there. I'm not saying
I think if all 3 of those tackles are gone, or guards, I should say, if all those guard prospects are gone.
Then you get him, yeah.
And if he's there, I think he'd be the pick.
But I love your take in terms of you're not going to find a starting guard or tackle in round 4.
Yeah, you could.
But you could definitely find a starting wide receiver in round 4.
Yes.
Like that's just how the draft goes every year.
Every year.
You're going to find a guy in the 4th round that is good enough to play on your team.
Yes.
In terms of wide receiver.
Completely agree. Now you could maybe find a decent guard in round 2 that could probably start for you. So if you want to play a little bit dangerously here, you could go receiver in round 1, then try to get one of these guards in round 2. That's a realistic possibility.
What I love about the draft though is there's 31 other teams that are doing the exact same thing you're doing. So if you want to you'd be like, oh yeah, I'm going to get a wide receiver because the guy I want is there. And then you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to wait until round 2 to get my guy. Maybe you have 3 guys that you would get in round 3 or round 2 and 3. They're all gone because there's 31 other teams that are picking as well. So it's like, which way do you want to go? Which way do you want to, sacrifice?
Yeah, I think there's a decent chance the Steelers could trade up to get probably a guard. Like if Venga Ioane is there at either 13 or 15, I could really see Omar Khan picking up that phone and going to get him because I think that he is just so perfect for what the Steelers need. Like some of these other guards that the Steelers are considering, Kalen Rutledge, Chase Basantis, they played right guard in college. Venga played left in school, and he was unbelievable at it. You plug and play him at Isaac Seumalo's spot, he'd be perfect at it immediately. And then I know trading up would mean you probably don't have a second-round selection this year, but you can get a good wide receiver in round 3.
Yeah.
You really can. There's a number of really, really good wide receivers in this class that are going to go on day 2. Somebody's going to fall to pick 76. So if the Steelers want to do that, whether it's Jeremy Bernard falls to 76, which I don't think because he's so good, but the Steelers certainly have a lot of interest in him. Whether it's Elijah Sarah,
I was going to say Elijah Sarah, I'm interested to see where he goes.
Yeah, me too. And then Zachariah Branch, another option. There's Skylar Bell. There's a lot of options on the table here for Pittsburgh.
I mean, Denzel Boston.
He won't make it to 76.
Well, more like if you want to trade up for him.
Yeah, that's a possibility for sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and honestly, I think the Steelers would take Denzel Boston over Casey Concepcion.
Yeah.
Because the Steelers had a combine formal and a top 30 with Denzel. They only had the combine formal with KC.
Right.
So I think if push comes to shove there with that decision between Casey Concepcion and Denzel Boston, I think they would pick Boston. So I don't know, man. It's going to be an interesting conversation. Maybe they trade up for Mekhi Lemon. I mean, I don't really know what Omar Khan's going to do in the first 2 rounds. What I do know is that the first 2 picks will likely be wide receiver and guard. It'll be some sort of combination of those 2 positions.
I like this from Bernard.
Bernard says, get up, said Ty Simpson could keep A-Rod from coming to the Steelers. LOL, stop. Yeah, no. Like, if they first of all, the Steelers probably won't draft Ty Simpson. Here's the thing.
I love how you said probably.
Yeah, I mean, listen, man, anything can happen, but I would think if the Steelers are going to spend a first-round pick on their future franchise quarterback, they'd have a top 30 visit with that player. They didn't have a top 30 visit with him. I just don't see Omar Khan and Mike McCarthy pulling the trigger on a quarterback that they didn't have a top 30 visit with. Just don't see that happening. And even if they did, I still think Rodgers, if he wanted to play, that wouldn't stop Rodgers from wanting to come back to the Steelers. $5 from Bernard again says, Jack, if you get tired of me asking you about Aaron Rodgers, just let me know. LOL, I just like the guy, and I think he's a great player. I mean, definitely an all-time great player. I think he's probably a good quarterback, not a great quarterback anymore. But like we talked about, if you have an elite defense, you got a really good surrounding cast, well coached around him, you can win a Super Bowl with a good quarterback in today's NFL. You really can. All right. Bernard Nixon with a 5 says Steelers players still want him back and still love him. That's all that matters at this point. Yeah, all the ponies of the world saying, "Oh, bad leader, he's going to lose the locker room." He didn't show up until mandatory minicamp last year. Nobody cared on the team. So now that, especially because he's played a year with a lot of these guys,
he's 40. You let him do whatever he wants.
Not whatever he wants, but I think that's kind of the sentiment in the building there. I think it's gotten to the point where it's like, it's Aaron Rodgers. He's an all-time great quarterback. If he shows up at mandatory minicamp, we're still going to be happy to have him. $5 from Bernard Nixon again says, hey, Jack, what makes you confident about A-Rod's playoff experience despite his playoff shortcomings? I mean, listen, man, obviously, makes it to one Super Bowl, never gets back to it. I think that's part of the hunger that is still there with Aaron Rodgers, why he still wants to play, because he wants to get back to that big game one more time. But obviously he's come up short, and, there's no excuse for that. But he's won, and he's played in a lot of playoff games. Would I rather have a quarterback that's played the most playoff games out of anybody in the NFL, but maybe has fallen short consistently in his career in the NFC Championship game after already winning playoff games before that? Or would I rather go into the playoffs with a guy that's never played in the playoffs and the stage might be too big for him, like Will Howard? Now, Howard played really well when the brights were brightest at Ohio State. So maybe Will Howard has that clutch gene that we talk about with Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady, and maybe Will Howard can deliver that. Just knowing the history of the NFL, first-time playoff quarterbacks almost always lose their first game in the playoffs. Almost always, unless they're playing against another first-time playoff quarterback, and somebody's got to win the game. So that's where I'm kind of at with it. I think Aaron Rodgers' playoff experience is a strength of his profile. Obviously, he doesn't have the playoff and Super Bowl resume that Tom Brady had at this stage of his career, but he still played in a lot of playoff games. And I would rather take that experience over somebody that has zero experience in the playoffs, which is most examples that the Steelers could grab on the quarterback market right now. All right, man, let's get into my next mock draft here. It is my perfect Steelers mock draft. My final mock draft will be next Wednesday, the day before the draft. So make sure you guys are subscribed to check out my final predictive mock. But without further ado, let's get into my perfect Steelers mock draft for the 2026 NFL draft. And Mr. Reed is still getting some graphics together for us here, so we'll just wait for him to get ready. All right, everybody just sit here and wait for Mr. Reed. Trying to get these graphics going for us. All right, let's do it. Ladies and gentlemen, today I'm going to be revealing my perfect Steelers mock draft for the 2026 NFL Draft right here on Steelers Talk by Chat Sports, presented by Prize Picks. Now, before we get into my perfect Steelers mock draft here, guys, my final predictive mock draft, where I actually predict what the Steelers are going to do this year, will be the day before the draft, Wednesday, April 22nd, next week. So make sure you guys are subscribed to catch all of our draft week content. I put out my final round one big board next week. We got all the last minute news and rumors from Mel Kiper Jr. and Todd McShay and all these different people that are going to be putting a lot of information out next week. So again, guys, make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already to join the Steelers Talk family, where we are currently the largest individually run Steelers news program anywhere here on YouTube. All right, so before we get into the mock today, just so you guys know, even though that this is my ideal mock draft, I am trying to keep this somewhat realistic. Now, the totality of this mock draft, probably unrealistic, all right? Again, it's a perfect, ideal version of a mock draft for the Pittsburgh Steelers, which means that we're going to be taking some liberties here, okay? But I do think that everything that I put in this mock draft has at least a somewhat realistic chance of being a possibility for the Pittsburgh Steelers next week. So without further ado, let's get into my perfect round one selection. I'm sticking and picking at number 21, and I'm taking wide receiver out of Indiana, Omar Cooper Jr., who I think is the perfect fit for what the Steelers need at wide receiver right now. What does Mike McCarthy keep saying about the wide receiver position? We want versatility. We want somebody that can line up in the slot, somebody that can line up outside, somebody that can run routes, somebody that can also run after the catch, someone that can make really tough catches out in space down the sideline, also make tough catches over the middle, and make acrobatic catches. Like, that's what Omar Cooper Jr. does, man. He might be the most versatile skill set out of any wide receiver in this year's draft class. I have absolutely fallen in love with him throughout this process. He also has connections inside the Steelers' building. New wide receivers coach Adam Henry recruited him to Indiana, and then Frank Signetti Jr., an offensive assistant, is Curt Signetti's brother. So certainly the connections are there for the Pittsburgh Steelers to go out and get this kid, and you bring him in here, and he's probably the best yak threat in the draft. He's one of. He's got incredible contact balance. He's got an incredibly built lower half, and that's important for Aaron Rodgers if he's going to be back next year. Michael Pittman Jr., not much in the yak department. A little bit. He's a tough runner after the catch, but he's not necessarily going to bring a lot of that juice. DK Metcalf does bring that juice in that regard. We'd be adding another one here in Omar Cooper Jr., who could be your starting slot right away, or if you want to put Pittman in the slot, Cooper can play outside. The versatility here is off the charts, and I just think that the combination of hands and route running and run after ability is just phenomenal, and I think you plug and play him here as this team's wide receiver 3 heading into the 2026 season. If Omar Cooper Jr. is there at 21, I am running that card up to the podium if I'm GM Omar Khan. So let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. Who is your ideal number one pick selection this year in round one for the Pittsburgh Steelers? For me, I would love to walk away with Omar Cooper Jr. from Indiana, but let me know what you guys think down there in the comments for today's pinned question. Just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Prize Picks. Well, I'll tell you about Prize Picks today. Let me know who your ideal round one selection is this year for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And today's show, of course, is brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks, America's #1 sports picks app. With playoff basketball finally here, there's no better time to cash in during the playoffs this season. The Prize Picks app is really easy to use, guys. Just pick more than or less than on a few player stats and lock in your lineup. And if you're a hoops guy, you can go with points, rebounds, assists, blocks, or three-pointers. And if you're more of a seam head and you like baseball, you can choose hits, home runs, or strikeouts. One thing I love about the Prize Picks app is the new social feeds feature where you can share Prize Picks with your friends and copy lineups with a single click. You can actually follow me on the app at C. Sperry to see all of my lineups. You can even look ahead to next year's football season with guys like Puka Nacua. You can pick the more on receiving touchdowns or passing yards here for quarterbacks like Dak Prescott and Caleb Williams. You guys can put in a $20 projection right now and win $120 if you get all three correct next season. So download the PrizePicks app today. Use code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to receive $50 in lineups from our friends at PrizePicks. That's code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to get an extra $50 in lineups with PrizePicks today. Click the link in the comments and description to download the app, and a big thank you to PrizePicks for sponsoring today's edition of Steelers Talk. All right, so now I think it's time to go and trade up here for another draft selection here for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm going to go get another round 2 pick, okay? And this isn't going to be moving up from 53. This is me getting an additional second round pick to go along with pick number 53. So I'm going to trade pick 76 and pick 99, 2 of your 3 third rounders, and 121, your first fourth rounder. And I'm going to trade up with the Atlanta Falcons, a team that has said that they are looking to trade down in round 2 this year in exchange for pick 48 and pick 231 in round 7. So now you have 4 seventh rounders. And with this selection, I am going to take offensive guard out of Oregon, Emmanuel Pregnon. Now, Pregnon has, I believe, only given up 1 sack in his college career. He's massive. He doesn't give up pressures. Fantastic pass protector, but he's also got some good ability as a run blocker as well. He's not that far behind from Venga Iwane, in my opinion. Now, I have Iwane as the number 1 offensive lineman in the draft, period, in terms of my grade. Pregnon might be in the top 5 for me by the end of the process here. He's that good, and if you can get him here at pick number 48 and he falls this far, you trade up for him. I think he's more than worth the 2 third-round picks and the 4th rounder you're giving up to go get him. He's a plug-and-play starting left guard that you plug in immediately on this starting offensive line. He's absolutely fantastic. Last year did not give up a single sack, only had 1 penalty. This guy is an absolute freak of nature at the left guard position, and he's one of the best bets in this draft. I would have almost a 100% likelihood that this guy would end up getting a second contract with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's that good of a prospect in my opinion, and frankly, it's one of the safer positions to draft early in the NFL draft. Usually the guards that get taken early end up getting second contracts, so that's a good sign of success, and I think that he would be a fantastic selection here at number 48. But we're not done here in round 2, and you might be thinking, oh, this is the perfect time to go get a safety, but at this point, I don't think that there's going to be any safeties that I want to take. So I'm actually going to go and get the nose tackle of the future here in Pittsburgh in Lee Hunter, who I think might end up being the best defensive lineman from this class, period, in terms of the interior guys. I think, he is a massive human being that eats double teams for breakfast, can take on that nose tackle role, but also he's got that little extra something, that ability, that extra little flash of athleticism to get into the backfield, get some TFLs, put some pressure on the quarterback. Somebody like a Caden McDonald from Ohio State is really going to eat those double teams well, but he's just going to be a run defender. He's not going to affect the quarterback. I see somebody here in Hunter who's not going to affect the quarterback on every play like an Aaron Donald or something like that, but he is somebody that is going to occasionally give you some flashes there, but he's also going to be an excellent run defender on day 1 for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he doesn't have to start right away. You got Sebastian Joseph Day as your starting nose tackle to start. You have Hunter in there as a rotational role in year 1 and probably even year 2, and then when Sebastian Joseph Day's contract eventually expires, Hunter is then ready to take on the full-time starting nose role here in the Steelers defense. Then in round 3 here at pick 85, this is where I will go get my safety, and I will take Jalen Kilgore, the DB from South Carolina. And of course, last year, the big-time impact DB, the big nickel type that got taken from South Carolina, and Nick Emmanwori got taken by the Seattle Seahawks, and that pick really catapulted that team and that defense to being one of the best defenses in football. Now, I don't think Kilgore is going to be that good in year 1, but I don't think anybody expected Nick Emmanwori to be as good as he was immediately for the Seattle Seahawks either. But Kilgore, like Emmanwori, is an absolute freak of nature, 210 pounds. That's a really good size for a safety or especially a big nickel. It's around the same size as Jalen Ramsey, the current current big nickel option for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He runs in the 4-4s, a really, really good athlete, and he's very versatile. If you want him to play safety in the future after Jaquan Brisker's one-year deal is over, I think he's got the range to play free safety. If you want him to play in the box, he's got the ability to do that as well, but he's also got the ability to be your big nickel when Jalen Ramsey is eventually done with that role here in Pittsburgh. Whether that's one more year here in Pittsburgh, whether it's after a number of years, this is somebody that if there's injuries, you can move him around to different spots. You can use him as a disguise piece. I think that's going to be a big part of Patrick Graham's defense this year is the disguise element of things. And you bring in a Jaquan Brisker on a one-year deal, somebody that has some concussion issues. He's not the perfect player because you want that stopgap, but you want to bring in somebody that you can mold and coach up and develop so that they can be an impact player for you down the road. I believe that Jalen Kilgore is the perfect player to kind of groom in that way for the 2026 season, and then we kind of figure out where we put him at the start of 2027. So before we get into our day 3 picks here on my perfect Steelers mock draft for the 2026 season, make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon if you are enjoying the show so far. We do our best to give you guys the best Steelers content here on YouTube for free, so make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon if you appreciate our efforts. All right, so now let's get to round 4, and I don't think this player has a terrific chance of being here at 135, but I think there is somewhat of a chance. He doesn't rank in the top 100 on the consensus big board right now. It's Markel Bell, the offensive tackle from Miami. This guy's absolutely huge, and he's a mauling left tackle. Now, the film's not perfect, okay? There's a reason why a guy of his size is going in round 4 in this scenario and has a chance to maybe go late round 3 in the actual NFL draft next week. It's because the film's not perfect. Sometimes he can get off balance and all these different things that you usually see from bigger tackles. But he is somebody that, he just flashes a lot on tape, not just because, it's a big man out there and when he's pancaking somebody, it's noticeable. But, he's just plays with a great tenacity. He's got really long arms too, everything that you look for there. And he's just tough to get around because he's so big. So I think he still needs a little bit of a refinement, but I think he'd be a good candidate to bring in here, compete with Dylan Cook and Broderick Jones for the starting left tackle job this year. If he's not ready for it, you develop him for a year, and then maybe in 2027 he's ready for it if you're letting Broderick and Dylan go in free agency. But, if he ends up earning the job out of camp, great. Like we just spent a 4th-round pick on our starting left tackle. I think that would be the ideal situation at the tackle position for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year. And then at the quarterback position, Drew Aller falling to round 5 is the ideal situation. Now, is Drew Aller going to fall to round 5? I guess you never know. Sometimes these guys fall crazy amounts. Like Shedeur Sanders went in round 5 last year. So I don't think it's an impossible situation. I think Aller probably more likely goes in round 4 or late round 3. And the Steelers might be the one to take him at those spots. But if I'm the Steelers, I want to be patient. I want to get value at this position because this is not a position I feel like the Steelers need to draft a player at. I think Aaron Rodgers is almost for sure going to be back next year. I like Mason Rudolph as a solid backup option. And you got a long-term younger guy to develop in the room as well in Will Howard. And if you add another younger guy to that group, somebody's got to be ixnayed, and that's probably Mason Rudolph. I'm open to that if you get the right value, but I just don't think you need to necessarily force a quarterback pick in round 3 or round 4. If Aller's there in round 5, I would be jumping for joy. He's got excellent arm talent, good playmaking instincts. I think that he's got underrated mental processing chops. I actually think that's probably the most underrated aspect of his game. I think he was poorly coached at Penn State. He was not surrounded by good weapons in that Nittany Lions offense. The offensive play calling was terrible. Maybe on a Mike McCarthy offense, somebody that's known for developing young quarterback talent, you give him a year to learn behind Aaron Rodgers. I think this guy, if he hits, could be maybe the next Joe Flacco. He reminds me a lot of Flacco when he was coming out of Delaware. Now we get to round 6, pick 216. I'm going to pick a linebacker here from Michigan, Jimmy Rolder, who I'm a really big fan of. His tape, man, he's got starter quality athleticism, and he just plays with his hair on fire. He plays physical. He's not a perfect prospect by any stretch of the imagination there. This is what Dane Brugler has to say about Rolder. Rolder needs to iron out his over-aggressive tendencies. I definitely agree with that, but he plays with his ascending instincts and the reactive athleticism to make plays in the NFL. If healthy, he will be an immediate contributor on special teams and offer the potential to become a weak side starter. And I do agree with that, man. I think he's a pretty good run defender. Needs more work as a pass defender, but hey, you're bringing in these guys The goal at inside linebacker this year should be for somebody to, develop into a future starter. And I think this guy has the athletic tools to one day be a starter in the league. He can contribute on special teams in year one, just like Carson Bruener did last year. And if Patrick Queen and Malik Harrison, don't have great seasons this year, you let them walk in free agency, and maybe this guy will be ready to take on that role. Producer Reed has the march on there with PBUs and interceptions, so F Reed down there in the comment section. But now we can move on here to round 7 picks here. Well, we will go with Charles Demings, the cornerback out of Stephen F. Austin. This is somebody that was a combine darling. He did pretty well at the Senior Bowl as well for somebody that's a small school dude. And he's probably a pure, projection and a developmental guy. The good news is the Steelers have the time and the resources to be able to give him that time to develop. You've got 2 really good veteran corners in Joey Porter Jr. and Jamel Dean. You've got some really good backups as well in Asante Samuel Jr. and Brandon Echols that can both play on the outside. And that can just provide Demings all the resources he needs to just sit, learn, develop behind those veteran guys that can teach him the tricks of the trade. And maybe by the time Jamel Dean's contract is up, this is somebody that the Steelers believe in enough to give a starting opportunity to. Then in round 7, we get Dallin Bentley, one of my favorite tight end prospects this year out of Utah. Inline blocker, does that at a really high level. He did that his entire college career, but what he added to his game this year at Utah was the ability to catch the ball. He was second on the team in receiving yards this year. I just watched him at the Shrine Bowl practices. I didn't know who he was at the time, and I was just like, who is this big guy that's moving really, really nicely right now? And I looked him up. It was Dallin Bentley, and I watched the film right after that. After that practice, I was like, yep, this guy's pretty darn good. I don't know why he's being projected as like a 7th round pick. So I think he might go a little bit earlier than round 7 in the real draft, maybe late round 5, early round 6, but man, the ideal situation for me is he falls to us in round 7. Then also in round 7, this is the pick we got from Atlanta. I'm going to take our punt returner and maybe a kickoff return man as well, Caden Legion, wide receiver from Iowa. This is another guy that impressed me at the Shrine Bowl. He just dominated in the one-on-one drills. And obviously Iowa, a team that likes to run the football, he didn't really get to show off his route running chops there at Iowa, but man, he was really crisp during Shrine Bowl week, and he's one of the best pure special teams helpers in this draft. He's going to be able to be for sure your punt return man, maybe even your kickoff return man from day one. I think that using that 7th round pick on a player like this, a contributor, an increasingly important position in the National Football League, I think is a very, very good selection. Then also in round 7 here, we're going to finish up this mock draft here with a tight end / fullback kind of hybrid. We took Dallin Bentley to be more of that tight end 3, maybe a future starter when, maybe the tight end room switches and changes up in the years to come. But I'm going to go get my Connor Hayward replacement here. Of course, Connor was our tight end / fullback kind of hybrid last year. I think Riley Nowakowski from Indiana, another Indiana Hoosier here, a national champion. I think he's got the body type to be a really freaking good fullback in this league. And if you're getting somebody that can be a contributor in that role, Mike McCarthy likes running 22 personnel if he has the personnel to do it. Just ask Green Bay Packer fans. And Nowakowski, I think, has a chance to really be a good fullback in this league. So if he's available at 237, would absolutely love that pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers. All right, that is my perfect Steelers mock draft this year. To recap, we got Omar Cooper Jr. in round 1, followed by Emmanuel Pregnon in round 2 after a trade up with the Atlanta Falcons, Lee Hunter at pick 53, Jalen Kilgore in round 3 there out of South Carolina, Markel Bell in round 4, the offensive tackle from Miami, Drew Aller, we land him in round 5 at a steal, then Jimmy Rolder, Charles Demings, Dallin Bentley, Caden Weegan, and Riley Nowakowski round out the rest of my mock draft this year. So let me know what you guys think about this mock down there in the comment section. Is it too unrealistic to – I honestly don't think it is. I think that this is something that, has a somewhat reasonable chance of happening here. But grade my perfect Steelers mock draft this year, A, B, C, D, or F, down there in the comment section. And, of course, next week I'm going to be having my final predictive mock draft where I will actually be trying to get inside the mind of GM Omar Khan and trying to predict what he is going to do next Thursday. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. I greatly appreciate your guys' support. And until next time, guys, here we go, Steelers. All right, second segment in the books.
I liked it. I thought it was pretty good.
Pretty good?
I thought it was pretty good.
I think it's perfect.
I mean, I think it is perfect.
I would.
But I think it's a little, not unrealistic, but
like, name the player that for sure won't be at the spot that I took him at.
For sure won't be there.
Because, like, obviously I'm drafting a lot of these guys towards, like, the tail end of where they could realistically go. But that's how you have to set up a perfect mock draft, in my opinion.
So we had, let's see. We had here.
So we can just recap.
Omar Cooper Jr., I think, will be there.
I think he's got a shot.
Emmanuel Pregnon.
Maybe, but, like, is it...
I don't think Lee Hunter's going to be there.
At 53, you think there's no chance? I think there's a chance,
but it's unlikely.
Like, if I took Lee Hunter in round 3...
Only because Kaleb Banks. He's going to fall.
Yeah,
People are going to take Lee Hunter. He's got a great, like, leadership. He was funny at the press conferences at the Combine. And he's got a great personality, good locker room guy. You want a guy who, I keep saying it, good head on his shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're going to...
It's your favorite line.
I think it is. It's like versatility.
Yeah, listen, man, I think Pregnon probably goes earlier than where I take him. But again, it's an ideal version. I don't think it's crazy that he falls to 48. Like,
I don't think it's crazy.
Some people are higher on Chase.
I don't think it's crazy.
Some people are higher on Chase Basantis. Some people are higher on some of the other options that are out there, right? So it just depends how the board falls. If I had to predict, I think Pregnon probably is off the board before 48. But is it like, oh my gosh, it's so unrealistic, this is just crazy? Like, I think, if we're talking ideal situations here, like, I think the mock draft is a pretty good one. I think I did a decent enough job kind of writing that gray line between, like, really, really idealized version, but also somewhat realistic.
I think I agree.
Like,
I think it's
like if
everything lines up perfectly, not even perfectly. If everything just happens to line up, I think that's possible.
Yeah, and like even the Drew Aller one, I don't think Drew Aller will go in round 5. But like, is it completely crazy?
He could fall.
Like, dude, if we told you last year Shedeur Sanders was going to be taken in round 5, everybody would say you were nuts, and and it happened. So like,
I think with Shedeur last year, it was like, it was so funny because he didn't have an agent, right? It was just his dad. So he was telling everybody.
Yeah.
And him and his dad were telling everybody in the media, "Oh yeah, we're top 5, top 2.
Yeah.
I'm the best quarterback in this class." Anybody can say that, but since they have so much pull in the media, everyone was like, "Oh yeah." They just went along with, "Oh yeah, he is."
Yeah.
But what we learned is that the front office and the NFL teams, they took him as round 3, round 5. I mean, so it's like,
dude, there's round 5 quarterbacks that go in round 5 every year that everybody was expecting to be like.
Yep.
Hell, people were talking about Will Howard in like the middle rounds last year. He ended up going in round 6. Like, there's quarterbacks that always fall. And like the ideal one for me would be Drew Aller to fall.
Yeah. And do you remember last year, Quinn Ewers?
Yeah, Quinn Ewers.
I remember Quinn Ewers. Everyone was like, "Well, he some people think he's better than Arch." And Arch was talking about, if he went out into the draft right now, he'd be getting so all this stuff. But
I don't know if anyone was saying Ewers is better than Arch.
And I don't know.
Arch.
Someone by the name of Jeffrey Cooperstein, once or twice.
Well, Coop's opinion does not factor into this at all. As Steelers fans know. Tegan with a 5 here says, "Hey Jack, what are some reasons to be both optimistic and skeptical?" You might want to start organizing questions here, the super chat ones probably, to kind of figure out how you want to go with it. What's that? We limit Bernard to just one. Just to be fair to everybody else. But what are some reasons to be both optimistic and skeptical for the upcoming season if Rodgers is back? Optimistic, I think the defense has the talent and now the coaching to potentially go from good to great or even elite next year. And I've said this a number of times. If the Steelers are going to win the Super Bowl next year, it's not going to be because they have the best offense in the world or they have the best quarterback in the league and have the MVP on their team. Like, they're going to win it the way that Philly won it and the way that Seattle won it these last 2 years. You have that elite defense. You have really good offensive infrastructure around a good quarterback. And I still think Rodgers has good quarterback play left in him, especially with the proper help around him. I mean, last year he didn't have the proper help around him. The Steelers had an average NFL offense. Just imagine, like, is it really crazy to think with big upgrades at offensive play caller and at wide receiver that Aaron Rodgers, by the way, with more chemistry with DK Metcalf, Pat Freiermuth, all these guys than he had a year ago, this team in this offense could be better than it was a year ago. And if the offense is getting better and the defense is getting better and this team won 10 games and won the division last year, like, you put all of that together, like, you're looking at a 12 or 13 win football team right there and somebody that's a team that's a legitimate contender in the AFC. Now, the skeptical side of things is the defense is getting older, right? Cam Hayward getting older. Is he going to fall off a cliff? TJ Watt, is he going to take another step backwards? You know, are they going to trade Nick Herbig this offseason? Patrick Queen, is he going to play better in Patrick Graham's defense, or is it still going to be, you know, the way that he's played the last several years? Will Peyton Wilson turn a corner, or is he going to continue to not be a very good football player? You know, Jalen Ramsey, is he going to continue to regress physically, and is that going to hurt this defense? Jaquan Brisker, can he stay healthy? You know, like, there's a lot of different things that you could look at and say and be skeptical, but I think a big way to be skeptical is this team hasn't won a playoff game with this current core of players, and they haven't won a playoff game in a decade. So why would they all of a sudden do it now that everyone's a year older? But I think that, you know, I'm definitely more on the optimistic side here, where I think they're fixing the biggest issue on the team last year, in my opinion, which was the two biggest ones were the lack of wide receiver weapons outside of DK Metcalf, and then the defensive coaching. I think they're fixing the defensive coaching with Patrick Graham, and I think they're fixing the wide receiver room by bringing in Michael Pittman Jr., and I think they're going to add multiple receivers in the draft. And I'm hoping that those moves are good enough there to get Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball down the field more than he did last year, being more efficient throwing the ball down the field, and then the defense, you know, actually living up to its billing, because it's been the most expensive defense in the league the last several years, and they've just been like above average. If you're going to be paying a defense that much, they got to be like top 5, top 3 in the league, and I think this year there's a decent chance we could actually get there this year.
So, sort of on the skeptical part, this kind of popped into my head, especially with Patrick Graham coming from the Raiders. I think he has built a great defense. I think it's fun to look at his ability to coach a team like that, where the defense was good, but it was never the problem, right? You got Max Crosby, you got a bunch of guys on that team that he kind of scrapped them all together and put something out there that was very usable. The only thing with the Raiders is they can't put together an offense or just a full team together. Special teams, all of them. But it popped into my head, skeptical. Are you worried that Mike McCarthy could turn into a Pete Carroll type of, maybe a little too old? He's got a good past, but maybe his best years are behind him. I
think that's a good point. Like, you know, we talked about it a lot when Mike was hired. It's that, you know, there's a reason why this fan base was not happy at the time of his firing, at the time of his hiring, I should say.
Yeah.
And it's because he is an older guy, and, you know, his offense, you know, it's in the same family as Sean Payton and Andy Reid, and people love those guys, but it is an older school West Coast system. So, you know, I think Rodgers is capable of executing it. You know, like
he's worked with him before.
He's worked with him before. He's won multiple MVPs. I'm not saying he'll win MVP this year. Like I said, it's going to be the defense that gets this team to where it needs to go, and Rodgers is just going to be driving the bus. But yeah, I think that's perfectly fair to bring up. $8 from Thomas says, I know the trenches are important, but I am over the offensive and defensive linemen. I want a skill position or make a splash and go get an absolute stud. I reject the notion that I know I get where you're coming from. This is not a dig at you, Thomas. I just don't like the notion of offensive linemen not being skill position players, because you have to have a lot of skill to play on the offensive line. Like, you know how fucking talented these pass rushers are in the league are, man?
Skill position, like skill position.
Dude,
like, what is that, skill for skinny? Like
you got to have the precision in your hands of a boxer. You have to have really good athleticism. You have to, be able to counter. And be a really smart person. Like, you gotta do a lot of things to be an offensive lineman. I get it's not the sexy pick, all right? But listen, man, I think I can't remember who said this, but I heard this week, and I thought it was really good. When was the last time somebody won a Super Bowl and the best player on their team was a wide receiver?
And their best player was on
the best player on the team was a receiver. Especially,
I mean,
but there's been a lot of teams that have won because they have great trench play and
correct.
They can control the line of scrimmage. That is where games are won and lost, especially in the AFC North.
Yeah,
and listen, man,
49ers from 1970s child. And actually, Despain has a great point that I thought
Jerry
of.
Rice, Jerry Rice was probably that's probably one of the examples.
It's a
long time ago.
If the Falcons didn't choke, Julio Jones.
But they did choke.
No, but I'm saying, like, Despain said nearly the Falcons.
Yeah,
I was like, if they did win, probably.
Yep.
Oh, Rams with Cooper Kupp. But I think Stafford's a better player in general.
Well, because Cooper...
That was his 2K year,
The thing about Cooper was that... And I would say Aaron Donald was the best player on that
Aaron
team.
Donald, for sure. So your point stands.
Now, Cooper, what's crazy about that team is you had Stafford, who I consider one of the best quarterbacks of this generation.
Buccaneers Antonio Brown.
yeah, that's good. But then you had Aaron Donald, a prime Jalen Ramsey. You had Cooper Kupp, who had maybe the best wide receiver season of all time that year. Like, you had an insane – like, the Rams had an insane team that year. Just insane in terms of the all-time great talents that were in there. But, like, there's not a whole lot of football teams where it's like you look at the Super Bowl champion team and you're like, wide receiver is the best player on their team.
Yeah.
But, like, there's a lot of teams where I think you point to their offensive line and their defensive line dominance and you say that is why they won.
The Colts, their offensive line was fantastic with Peyton Manning.
Yes. The Eagles 2 years ago.
Yep.
Obviously defensive line play exactly. Like, I just think that games in the NFL are won and lost with offensive and defensive linemen. Yep. Now, that doesn't mean that wide receiver isn't important. Like, as Steelers fans, we saw how important wide receiver is last year, especially when you have a non-mobile quarterback. You have to get guys that can get open if you don't have somebody that can create with their legs and create out of structure. So, especially for the type of quarterback that we have, or that we think we have, we'll see what Rodgers does, but we're pretty sure he'll be back. You have two good receivers already. It's not like you need a true number one wide receiver. That's not necessarily what you need. What you do need is you need a day one starting left guard, in my opinion, and, it's a really good wide receiver class. So if you're just playing the odds, like, there's a chance that they take receiver round one and there are no good starting left guard options at 53. There's a chance that happens. Yeah. And I don't know if I want to, like, especially if Venga, Fano, or Proctor are there, like, those are the three guys that if they're there, I don't think I'm passing on those guys for a receiver.
Yeah, that's a good point. Somebody in the comment section said Santonio Holmes.
Was he? I think Big Ben was the best. And Troy Polamalu and James Harrison.
I was just about to say, James Harrison is
Santonio Holmes was not the best player on that team.
He was probably third or fourth best on that team.
Yeah, and, like, Santonio's a great player.
He's a great player. He made a great catch, too.
All-time great catch in the Super Bowl. He was not the best football player on that team. So, the point stands that, like, I would say, you can get a really good wide receiver 3 in round 2 or round 3 of this draft. That's almost a guarantee because there's so many good options. With guard, there's less options. So if you have one in your sights at 21, I don't think, especially a GM like Omar Khan, who has only taken trench players, is going to say no to the trench player.
I like this from 1970s child, Jennings Dunker. Big Iowa guy.
Yeah, I don't mind.
Strong.
I don't mind Jennings Dunker. He's very strong. He fits the Pittsburgh Steelers mentality. Same colorway. Here's my issue with Dunker. He's got the body type to play tackle. So why are we talking about him having to play guard? It's because he sucks at playing tackle. So if he's and he's on the ground a lot. Yeah, but I mean, listen, it's a risk because first of all, Jennings played on the right side. He'd have to play left guard, so that's a completely new position. It's a projection. You're taking a risk with Jennings Dunker. But like if you take Venga Iwane in round 1 or Spencer Fano, who is also a right tackle, but I think he'd make such a clean transition to left guard. No qualms about that. And even Caden Proctor. Caden Proctor is never, ever on the ground on film. His balance is unbelievable. He's got tree trunks for legs.
Skill position.
He's 350 pounds, and he's got awesome hand usage. Like his punches, super accurate. And he's got incredible grip strength. Maybe the best anchor in the draft. He might not have the foot speed to play tackle. If the Steelers draft him to play tackle, I won't like the pick. But I think Caden Proctor can be your day 1 starting left guard. And if they take him over, say, Casey Concepcion and Denzel Boston, I'll be fine with the pick. All right? I know for some reason Proctor has this kind of reputation of being like a raw player. But the one thing that's really apparent on his film is that he's 380 pounds, so his feet are slow. But if you're inside, it doesn't matter if your feet are slow. As long as you got accurate hands, you're powerful, you got good upper body strength, you can anchor, you can be a really good guard. So I think Caden Proctor, I've really grown to appreciate Proctor throughout this process. And I think that if the Steelers end up taking him, he'd be a decent pick. Carter here, the 5, says Jalen Ramsey is getting old, and Graham wants to run a lot of big nickel. I believe if Caleb Downs is available at 11, we should trade up for him. Well, what are you doing with Ramsey then? Play him at safety? He wasn't great. He played his best football last year at big nickel. And, obviously there were certain moments where Tomlin and Austin still thought it was prime Jalen Ramsey, and they would say, go line up against Jamar Chase one-on-one in man coverage. And that's just not who Ramsey is. Ramsey is somebody that's a roamer, somebody that if he gets his eyes on the quarterback and he can read the eyes of the quarterback, he's so instinctive, so cerebral, he's so smart, and he's still a really good athlete for his size. He's not what he once was, but he's still a very good athlete for his size. He's maybe the best tackling defensive back in football. Long arms, physical as all hell, and he's one of the best blitzing DBs in the league too. So, unfortunately, last year, the safety position was just such in shambles for the Steelers where they had to play Ramsey at free safety, but that led to other issues because you don't have a lot of size. You can't blitz your nickel anymore at the same level. Your nickel's not as good of a run defender. He's completely out of the run picture pretty much entirely because he's a free safety. I think Jalen Ramsey's a perfect big nickel. Now, he is getting older, so that's why I took Jalen Kilgore in my mock draft, because he can play big nickel down the road after he develops a little bit. So I think if Graham wants to do that, I just think that trading up to get Caleb Downs, who's going to go really early, Miami I don't think is trading down. Miami needs an awesome player. They're not trading down, and they're not going to have their only 2 first-round picks be 21 and 30. Because they already have 11 picks. They have 4 third-rounders. They got 2 firsts. They're not going to trade out of 11. I just don't think Miami's going to do that. I think they're going to take best player available at 11. So I don't think that's a realistic possibility. And I just don't see Caleb falling to 13 or 15 or any of these spots. If he does, maybe you think about it, but I just don't think Caleb Downs is in the equation. Because here's another thing, Reed. I don't think the Steelers are looking for a day 1 starter at safety. I think they want somebody like a Kilgore, somebody with a lot of upside, somebody that can sit for his first year and learn from Jaquan Brisker and Deshaun Elliott and Jalen Ramsey, and then eventually take over in 2027. If you trade up and you trade up multiple, you're going to have to trade maybe, your second-round pick this year, and then at least maybe one of your third-rounders to move up to 11 or 13 or one of these top 15 picks. So you're not going to be able to get a guard within the first 2 rounds. You're not going to be able to get a wide receiver in the first 2 rounds, and you're spending your pick on a safety when you don't really need a safety. You've got Jaquan Brisker and Deshaun Elliott, that's a really good safety duo for now. All right, you can go wide receiver and guard with your first 2 picks, and then take a good mid-round safety that projects as a future starter. That is the strategy that I think the Steelers are going down. I think that's the correct strategy. $10 from Hunter Dillman says Cam Hayward on Rich Eisen's show praised Will Howard. Rodgers is a huge fan of Will. Rodgers said himself on McAfee this year that he's a big fan of Will. Challenged the first-team defense in practice with mobility and completions, always competing, giddy for any chance. Said when, not if, he starts. Thoughts? Listen, man, I like Will Howard. I think I've said since the day he was drafted, this guy has some starter quality tools. I think he's a little bit limited because I don't see him as a truly special, out of structure playmaker. I think his throwing motion is a little, I'm not going to say robotic, but he's not a natural thrower of the football is the way that I would describe his throwing motion. And he was very much a one read to run or one read to check down quarterback at Ohio State. Now, he could get away with it at Ohio State because he had Jeremiah fucking Smith, he had Emeka Egbuka, and Carnell Tate. All right? Like, those three guys might be the best receivers in 3 straight wide receiver classes.
I was going to say, that's three first-round picks right there.
Yes, 3 first-round picks. Maybe one of the best wide receiver trios in the league. Now, Teteroa McMillan's awesome, right? There were some really good receivers that came out last year. Maybe Emeka Egbuka is not the best receiver from the class. But you had those 3, and you had Quinshawn Judkins and Travion Henderson, and you had multiple first-round picks on the offensive line. Yeah, Cade Stover, Max Clare, who's coming out this year. Like, that team was one of the greatest college football teams of all time. Like, there's going to be 4 players from Ohio State that go in the top 10 this year. No, they were all on that team. So, like, forgive me for I don't want to discount Will Howard's national championship run because he played really well in the playoffs. And, he's got the heart of a champion, all that stuff. And I like Will. But, like, when people say he's a national champion, it's like Tim Tebow's a national champion. A.J. McCarron's a national champion. J.J. McCarthy is a national champion. That doesn't mean you're going to be a good football player in the league, especially when you're surrounded by amazing talent that would, suffice to make an NFL football team. Like, that Ohio State team, if you give them, like, a legit NFL starting quarterback, they could compete with any team in the NFL. Maybe not any team in the NFL, maybe a lower-level NFL team. Like, that was a lot of really good players. Arvell Reese, man, like Kaleb Downs. Sonny Styles was on that team. Igbeneusen, who's coming out this year. Like, that defense was just insane. Yeah, exactly. They had Caden McDonald was on that team. Like, dude, that Ohio State team was fucking loaded. Now, does that mean that Will Howard can't develop? No, I think that I'm willing to give Will Howard a chance, and it seems like, based on everything that people say inside the building, he's taking every single step he needs to take. The only problem is it's hard to bank on that in a win-now season when you haven't seen it. He hasn't even played a preseason snap yet. So, I think the Steelers are comfortable with Will Howard, and, I think because of that, they don't feel any pressure to take a quarterback early in the NFL draft this year. I think if they draft one, it's going to be on day 3. And listen, man, if Will Howard is the only quote-unquote long-term option at quarterback on the team this year, I'm fine with that because everything that people say about him is awesome. I like the size. I like the arm strength. I like the touch on the deep ball. I like the mental processing maybe potential. We didn't see it a whole lot at Kansas State and Ohio State, but apparently this guy is super smart. He's an eidetic memory. So you'd think he'd be able to pick up some tips and tricks from Aaron Rodgers that he learned in his first year. Like, I like Will Howard. I'm rooting for the kid. All right, but I also know the percentages of 6th-round picks working out in the NFL, especially in their first year. Like, it's not great. Like, unless you're Tom Brady or Brock Purdy, it's probably not working out. Those are the odds. And, those aren't great odds. So, I'm rooting for him. I really am. I think he's got some nice tools. I think there's a world where he could become a starter in this league. It's just he's got to prove it. And I'm definitely not in favor of just saying, here you go, 6th-round pick that's never taken an NFL snap. You're our starting quarterback now. It's like, at the very least, he has to win a competition in camp. He can't just be handed the job. All right, well, now let's get into our mailbag here, where you guys have a bunch of great questions for me. Can't wait to get into them here. So without further ado here, Mr. Barkis, let's get into our mailbag and let's finish up today's live show. Welcome into Steelers Talk by Chat Sports, presented by Prize Picks. I'm your host, Jack Sperry, and on today's show, it's my favorite segment of the week. I'm answering your questions here on the Steelers Talk Mailbag, and this is probably going to be the last mailbag that we do on this channel before the start of the NFL draft. So I'm sure a bunch of great draft questions coming up here on today's show. But before we get into the questions today, make sure you guys click that subscribe button to join the most interactive Steelers community for Steelers fans anywhere here on YouTube, or at least that's what we strive to be. I think there's a reason why we have almost 120,000 subscribers on this channel, and we're the largest individually run Steelers news program anywhere here on YouTube. It's because we are dedicated to getting you guys in-depth, contextualized, nuanced Steelers content every single day for free, and we provide you guys opportunities to have your voice heard with these mailbags on our live shows every single week. We go live twice a week so that we can talk Steelers football. We go live for every single Steelers game to react to the season together. This is a community and a family that we've built here on Steelers Talk that we're really proud of. So if you guys want to join that, make sure you guys click that subscribe button. I promise you won't regret it. All right, so now $5 here from Bernard Nixon says, I'm a little annoyed at Aaron Rodgers at this point. He's earned the right to take his time, but it shouldn't take this long to decide to play football or not. And I think that's exactly it, Bernard. Like, he wants to have time. He wants a long runway to make sure that he wants to spend another half year of his life dedicated to playing football. And he doesn't want to get to, midway through May or early June and say, man, you know what? I'm just not really feeling it. I'm going to retire after signing in March. Like, he just wants, I think he's pretty much already made up his mind. He's having conversations with Mike McCarthy, the Steelers head coach, twice a week at least at this point. You don't do that unless you're heavily implying you're coming back, which is why I think the Steelers are comfortable with this process. The same thing happened last year with Mike McCarthy, or with Mike Tomlin, I should say, and Tomlin confirmed during training camp, yeah, I knew he was coming back. So, I think it's a very similar situation with McCarthy, where Rodgers just wants to go through this process his way. And is that way frustrating for fans? Absolutely. Would I want him to be there during the offseason program this year? Absolutely, especially with the new head coach. But I think at the end of the day, if he signs in mid-March, it's not going to matter that much more in terms of the result of the season once we get there if he would have signed in February or March, right? So I would prefer him to sign as soon as possible, but I think the Steelers are pretty comfortable with where he's at, and they think he's coming back, and I think that he will be as well. $5 from O-Dub says, Jack, why do you think the Steelers didn't use a top 30 visit on Omar Cooper Jr., Jordan Tyson, or even Casey Concepcion? Now, KC, I think, might be like their sixth wide receiver on their board. Maybe if there's an opportunity to trade up for him in the early second, they might take that. But I think because Denzel Boston was the one that got the top 30 visit and he had a combine formal meeting as well, that combination means that I think the Steelers would probably take Denzel Boston over Casey Concepcion. When it comes to Omar Cooper and Jordan Tyson, though, I think that they've got other connections that maybe they felt comfortable with those players enough or they didn't feel like they needed to fly them to Pittsburgh. It's also maybe something where scheduling, just didn't work out for these players. But Omar Cooper Jr. Has a connection to wide receiver coach Adam Henry and offensive assistant Frank Signetti Jr., who's actually Kurt Signetti's brother. Of course, the head coach of the Indiana Hoosiers. And then Jordan Tyson, Hines Ward was his wide receiver coach at Arizona State. So obviously they have that connection as well. So maybe they feel good about those guys, didn't feel the need to bring him in for a visit. Don't know the exact reason why, but there's other reasons to maybe think that the Steelers could still be interested in these players. Michael here says, who's your favorite prospect in this draft? Favorite prospect overall? I'm going to give one that people from Pittsburgh are going to love because he played for the Pitt Panthers, Kyle Lewis, linebacker, DB, whatever you guys want to call him. He's not a true linebacker, but man, is he a special football player. Great athlete, super bendy, terrific in coverage, great instincts in coverage. He's not a good run defender. For an in-between the tackles linebacker, and the team that drafts him is going to almost have to use him like nick him and worry almost as like a big nickel, somebody that's playing outside the tackles more. But I just love the way he plays the position, man. And in the modern-day NFL, there's a role for a guy like there's a role for a guy like this. So I just love Kyle Lewis, man. But before we get into the rest of the questions today, let's have a word from our sponsor today at Prize Picks. Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks, America's #1 sports picks app. With playoff basketball finally here, there's no better time to cash in during the playoffs this year. The Prize Picks app is super easy to use. You just pick more than or less than on a few player stat projections, and you lock in your lineup. If you're a hoops guy, you can go with points, rebounds, assists, blocks, or three-pointers. And if you're more of a seam head and you like baseball more, you can choose hits, home runs, or strikeouts. One thing that I love about the Prize Picks app is their new social feeds feature where you can share Prize Picks with your friends and copy lineups with a single click. You can actually follow me on the app at C. Sperry to see all of my lineups. You can even look ahead to next year's football season where you can project the total amount of receiving touchdowns for receivers like Puka Nacua or the passing yards for guys like Dak Prescott and Caleb Williams. If you put in a $20 projection on these three things, if you get them all three right, you can get $120 in return. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to receive $50 in lineups. That's code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to get an extra $50 in lineups with Prize Picks today. Click the link in the comments and description to download the app. And a big thank you to Prize Picks for sponsoring today's edition of Steelers Talk. $5 here from Tegan Stewart says, hey, Jack, what are some reasons to be both optimistic and skeptical for the upcoming season if Rodgers is back? I think some reasons to be optimistic is that the two biggest issues on the team last year are being addressed in wide receiver. There wasn't enough good wide receiver talent around DK Metcalf, and because of that, he got double-teamed very consistently last year, and Rodgers couldn't throw him the ball as much as he wanted to, and he had to kind of play the dink and dunk kind of, screen and yak game. And I think he did a pretty decent job managing the game in that way. But obviously, I think Rodgers would prefer to throw the ball downfield a little bit more with better receivers around him. And then also the defensive coaching with Terrell Austin. I think you're getting a big upgrade in Patrick Graham. It sounds like they're going to be running more of a big nickel style of defense here this year with Jalen Ramsey as that Derwin James, Kyle Hamilton, Nick Emenwari type of player. And I'm so excited to see what that looks like. And plain simply, guys, like if Patrick Graham can get this defense to play good or go from good under Terrell Austin and Mike Tomlin to great or elite under his tutelage, like that's the type of thing that can catapult a team from 10 wins and a first-round playoff exit to legitimately competing for a Super Bowl and bringing back the Steel Curtain here in Pittsburgh. And Rodgers, I think if you put the proper supporting cast around him, he can play better in year 2 than he did in year 1 here. And if the offense and the defense are performing better coming off of a 10-win season where you won the division, I mean, if both sides of the ball are improving, I mean, you could look at 12 or 13 wins next year for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, reasons to be skeptical: an older head coach coming in that has been fired from 2 previous spots. He's kind of known for being maybe a little bit boring with his scheme and not a lot of motion, and it's not necessarily considered quote-unquote modern, or at least it wasn't in Dallas and Green Bay. So maybe that could be something that holds the Steelers offense back this year. Maybe the offensive line takes a step backwards. Maybe there's injuries. The defense is a year older. Maybe Cam Hayward falls off a cliff. TJ Watt continues to regress. Jalen Ramsey continues to regress. Like, there's reasons to be both optimistic and skeptical. But for me personally, man, I choose to be a little bit more on the optimistic side. All right, next question here from Christine says, do you think there's any chance that we trade up for Downs or Thieneman? Don't think so. Here's the reason. I think with the safety position, what the Steelers want is they don't want somebody that is going to be a day one starter. And I think especially if you trade up for a safety, you're investing a lot in that player, and you're probably going to play them pretty close to right away. Whereas you need immediate starters at left guard and wide receiver, I don't think you need an immediate starter at safety. You brought in Jaquan Brisker, who's a starting level safety. You still have Deshaun Elliott, who's a really good player. Jalen Ramsey can play safety as well, but he'll be playing big nickel. That's your starting secondary this year. So I would rather spend a third-round pick on Jalen Kilgore or Bud Clark, 2 really good players that can, in the future, be a full-time starter for you and be a really good football player for you. And I'd rather go get your impact players in round 1 and round 2 at guard and wide receiver, which are your 2 biggest needs. So I like Downs and Thieneman as players, awesome football players. I also think there's good safety prospects available in round 3, and I think that that's probably what the Steelers do at this given position. All right, so let me know down there in the comments section, should the Steelers trade up in the NFL draft this year? And if so, let me know for what player or position group that you would prefer that trade up to be for. Give me a yes or a no down there in the comments section. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section, and we can continue on here. Oh, with some more questions. We got I Drop Sounds 1 says, do you think we can win a playoff game this year? Yes, I do. I believe it or not, I do. I think that a change in leadership, a change in scheme on both sides of the ball is going to do this team a lot of good. Is Mike McCarthy the same kind of dynamic leader of men Mike Tomlin was? No, but I also think he's a lot better of an offensive mind than Arthur Smith was. Definitely more successful throughout the course of his career on average. And then Patrick Graham, who's one of the most respected defensive minds in football, is our new DC. A huge upgrade compared to what we had in Terrell Austin. And you still have a lot of the great veteran talent that was here before. In my opinion, the previous coaching staff didn't get enough out of the players that they had. Now a new coaching staff that I think has a lot of bright new ideas is coming in. And I think, with Aaron Rodgers coming back with a ton of playoff experience, I think that matters come playoff time. You're going to have a better receiver room. So if you run into that Houston Texans defense again, you're going to have more options to throw the ball than you had last year. I just think that, this year, the Steelers are going to have their best chance to win a playoff game in a long time. And I think that was the case last year as well. This year, I think they have a chance to take another step forward from where they were last year and potentially even get to like 12 or 13 wins and truly become a contender in the AFC next season. But again, that defense needs to take that next step. $10 from Hunter Dillman says, Cam on a Rich Eisen show praised Will Howard. Rodgers is a huge fan. Challenged the number one defense in practice with mobility and completions. Always competing, giddy for any chance. Said when, not if, he starts. Thoughts? People inside the Steelers building are legitimately high on Will Howard, and I've said since the day we drafted him, he's got some nice little starter upside to him, okay? He's got good size, good arm strength. It's not great arm strength. He's not he's a good athlete, not a dynamic runner of the football or anything like that. He's got some power as a rusher as well. I think that he's a smart person, but we didn't see him really be like a full field progression read type of quarterback in college. I think he can eventually get there. Also, the accuracy was inconsistent at best at Ohio State, in my opinion, especially 10-plus yards down the field. So he's going to be somebody that has smaller hands as well. So AFC North, colder weather, 9-inch hands is really small, especially on a bigger quarterback. So fumbles might be an issue for him as well. He's somebody that I think has some starter qualities, and, if he really picks up full field progression reads and he really mentally processes the, NFL defenses well and can get the ball out quickly and be a really good pocket passer, he could be at like a Dak Prescott at his absolute highest level. But, Dak had a long way to go when he got drafted out of Mississippi State to where he is now. And Will Howard has a long way to go from where he was at Ohio State to Dak Prescott. So, he's got a very similar skill set. They're very similar sizes, very similar skill sets. But, the mental processing needs to get a lot better to get to where Dak is at. He's maybe a top 5, maybe even top 3 mental processor in the game today. He's a bona fide top 10 quarterback because he just shreds defenses with his mind. Howard needs to become one of those quarterbacks, and those quarterbacks are very rare. So if he can do that, fantastic. We got a franchise quarterback for the low, low price of a 6th-round pick. But the chances of a 6th-round pick developing into that type of quarterback are relatively low. So I have reasonable expectations for Will Howard. And, if Rodgers retires, I think that you probably got to bring in competition and make him earn the job in camp this year. $7.99 from Thomas says, I know the trenches are important, but I am over offensive and defensive linemen. I want a skill position or make a splash and go get an absolute stud. Listen, man, I get that people want the sexy move, but at the end of the day, trench play wins games and wins championships at the NFL level. Now, we saw last year how important a lack of wide receiver talent is in the league as well, especially if you have a non-mobile quarterback who has to win from within structure. We saw what a bad wide receiver room can do to a team, and it just limited the offense last year. There's no way around it. But you also need really good trench play, especially in this division where it's going to be crappy weather outside at times, and the team that wins the line of scrimmage is going to win the game more often than not. And I think that we have a lot of talent on both sides of the line. But right now, left tackle, left guard, especially left guard, is a big question mark for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And if you can draft one of these guys who I consider like legit round 1 guard prospects. I know Fano and Proctor are coming out as tackles, but I think they project better as guards. or Venga Iwane, who was a guard in college, plug-and-play starter. He should be the number one player on the Steelers' big board, in my opinion. I think that if you can get any of these players, you fix that issue. And, when it comes to wide receiver, I get wanting to take one, a really big name, really exciting. It gets the fans excited on day one of the draft. It's all great stuff. And if they take a receiver, great. I'd be happy with it. You guys know how much I want receiver help here. But I also think you got to play the percentages, and the chances of you finding a good wide receiver 3 to complement DK Metcalf and Michael Pittman Jr. in round 3 is a hell of a lot higher than finding, a legitimate starting left guard for you on day 1 in, pick 53 or in round 3, right? So I think if you have a chance to take a really good offensive guard at pick 21, I think Omar Khan, who has taken all 3 of his first-round selections along the trenches, is probably going to pick the trench player. So I understand where you're coming from, Thomas. I'm right there with you. Got to get more receiver help in this draft, but the good news is that it's a great receiver class. You can probably get one on day 2 that's going to be ready to be a starter day 1 in this league. Make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon if you haven't already. If you're a real one, we still got some more questions to get to here. So rolling right along here to JT Clover says, I'm worried about the safety position. All 3 have problems in pass coverage. Ramsey, Deshaun, and Brisker all have problems covering tight ends and slot wide receivers. I think in man coverage, you make a decent point there, but you also have smaller guys like Brandon Echols that can fill those roles in those certain matchups when you want to go to those types of sets. I'm not as worried about it because I think that the Steelers are going to be, doing a lot of creative stuff in terms of post-snap rotations and exotic blitz looks. Like Patrick Graham loves to get creative with that stuff. I think they're going to be playing honestly, a lot of man-match stuff on the outside as well as just pure man with Joey Porter Jr. and Jamel Dean. I think they're going to rotate coverage away from especially JPJ a lot of the times as well because he's so good in just pure man-to-man coverage. He can be that meg defender, and it's going to allow Elliott, Brisker, and Ramsey to have, a larger room for error, if you will, okay? So even though those guys, some of them are getting older like Ramsey, I still think he's a good coverage player. Like Ramsey in zone coverage is still excellent because when he has his eyes on the quarterback, he just can read those eyes so beautifully. And especially from the nickel position, he is just so freaking good from that position. Deshaun Elliott is an awesome tackler, great run defender, great strong safety, and Brisker, good athlete. I agree with you. He's not the best in coverage, but he's certainly good enough, especially, JT, with how good this pass rush should be next year. Like TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith. Hopefully we can find a way to have Watt, Highsmith, and Herbig on this team all together next year. You got a good blitzing linebacker in Patrick Queen. You're going to be blitzing Ramsey a lot as well. Like you're going to be able to get creative with this group, and I understand some of the concerns there, but honestly, man, I think this is a really good DB group that the Steelers have heading into next year. $5 from Carter says Jalen Ramsey is getting old, and Patrick Graham wants to run a lot of big nickel. I believe if Caleb Downs is available at 11, we would trade up for him. I don't think so. You have to give up a lot to move up from 21 to 11. You have to give up probably, for sure, your round 2 pick, and then probably 2 of your third-round picks, and that's probably where the negotiations start. Honestly, because Miami already has so many picks, they're probably going to want picks next year, and I don't think the Steelers want to give up picks next year because next year they might have to draft a quarterback in round 1. They don't want to give up high-end draft capital in 2027. So I just think 11 is too steep. First off there, Carter. Also, I don't think Miami wants to trade down because they already have 11 picks, and they, I believe, have 7 in the top 100. So it's not like they need more picks. What they need is an excellent prospect at number 11. So I really don't think Miami's going to trade down. And then also, like I mentioned this earlier, I don't think the Steelers need to use one of their first 2 picks on a safety. You've got a good enough group of safeties right now where you don't need to draft a day 1 starter. And I think you can draft somebody on round 3. There's going to be plenty of good safety prospects there. Maybe Traden Stukes falls to you. Keontae Scott maybe. For sure Bud Clark or Jalen Kilgore will probably be there at pick 76. So I think that there's good safety players available that kind of fit the mold of what the Steelers want. Somebody that's a developmental guy that's going to be able to start in 2027 as opposed to trading up for Caleb Downs, giving up your second-round pick this year, and all of a sudden you go through the first 2 rounds and you don't have a receiver or a guard, your 2 most important positions to address this year. So with all due respect to this trade idea and Caleb Downs, who I think is an awesome player, I got to have a guard and a wide receiver with my first 2 picks if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers. Kevin Reed here says, do you think they trade up for Carnell Tate to pair him with Will Howard? If he starts falling, like if he's available at 13, 15, 16, and you can put together a good deal to move up, absolutely, I think the Steelers would do this. All right, awesome contested catch guy down the field, better route runner than people give him credit for. Not a ton of slot versatility, but if you bring him in, DK and Pittman and Roman can probably fill out the slot snaps. Like, I would be fine with that. For the right price tag, I think 11 is too high for it because you're going to have to give up a lot to go up there, and Miami's not going to want to trade down. But I think 13 is probably the highest the Steelers could realistically trade up this year. But if he falls to 15, which I don't think is likely, by the way, I think Tate's going in the top 10. But if he falls, I do think the Steelers could potentially be interested. So be honest with me down there in the comments section, guys. Which position should pick number 21 be? Give me OL for offensive line or WR for receiver. If there's another position like safety or quarterback or something else, let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. For me, I would want it to be either one of these positions, but probably prioritize offensive line if you can get one. Just playing the odds, I can get a receiver on day 2 that can start as my wide receiver 3 immediately pretty easily, whereas finding a legitimate starting left guard on day 2 might be a little bit more difficult. All right, make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Greatly appreciate you guys making it to the end of this week's mailbag. Of course, this upcoming week with the NFL draft, there's going to be a bunch of great content for you guys to enjoy. If you don't want to miss any of that, click that subscribe button, turn on the bell for the notifications so you always know when we put out new content. Till next time, guys, here we go, Steelers. All right, we'll stay live as long as the Super Chats keep flowing. All right, let's run through them here because I know Mr. Reed has a hot date tonight, so, he's got to get out of here. $5 from Bernard says, for now I'm running with A-Rod, is now on the team just like last year. It's when, not if. Yep, we talk about this every single show at this point, that it's when, not if. Bernard says, I see a lot of people not have A-Rod in their top 10. That's crazy. He's a top 4 all-time MVP, 4-time MVP. He's 100% top 10.
I think, not to cut you off, I'm sorry, but all-time, he's got to be.
I think he's saying right now.
Right now? He's not top 10 right now.
Are you saying right now, Bernard? Because I would say right now he's not in the top 10. I think.
But all-time,
potentially.
He's around that 10 mark.
No, he's definitely in the 10.
There could be some.
There's a debate for top 5.
Really?
With his 4-time MVP, man.
4-time MVP, the arm talent. I think the Super Bowls would kind of get to him a little bit.
Fair enough.
But he still won one, though. Like, Patrick Mahomes is up there. I think Aaron Rodgers better than Patrick Mahomes.
I don't know about that.
I don't know.
Listen, I think Aaron Rodgers
all time,
probably
maybe.
top 5 all time. But if you're saying top 10 right now, here's what I'll say. With the right supporting cast and the right scheme, it's possible he could be a top 10 producer at the position. But what people forget and what people don't really think about is that quarterback production is more than just how good is your quarterback. It's how good is the scheme? How good are the players around you? Like, all of that contributes to production. All right, it's not just how the quarterback is in a vacuum. So this is where people go wrong. Like people will look at a quarterback with, okay production, but they have terrible surrounding cast around them, like Rodgers last year, and they say, "Oh, he's a limited quarterback. Oh, he's older. He's not going to be able to elevate his game." But we saw Tom Brady at the same age go from New England in his final season, by the numbers from a production standpoint, not a top 20 quarterback in the league that year. All right, not a top 20 quarterback. Then he goes to Tampa the next year with good weapons, better play calling, all that different stuff. Todd Bowles' defense, wins a Super Bowl at 43 years old. All right, so this is what I like to say. A lot of people seem to think that quarterbacks can't get better after their first couple of years because they only think of it in a vacuum. And they think, oh, the production is who they are as a player. And it's like, it's part of it, like their play and what they bring to the table is part of the production, but it's not the whole picture, right? And there's 2 ways where a quarterback can improve. Number 1, they improve their skill set and they become a better quarterback through development. That usually only happens with younger quarterbacks. Or they can get better by having better supporting casts around them. So you take a quarterback, like Aaron Rodgers, and you give him an excellent supporting cast like the Steelers are trying to do this year, with a really good play caller, good weapons around him, good run game, excellent defense. Could that be a top 10 quarterback in terms of production next year? I think so. Now, in a vacuum, am I taking Rodgers top 10? Probably not, because he's not very mobile. He's not an out-of-structure playmaker. He's not going to elevate a bad team necessarily that much. So I would probably put him maybe in the top 15. I think that you can make an argument for that. But top 10 might be a little bit rich for me in the modern-day NFL. But like Hurts and Darnold, on a year-to-year basis, are in that 10 to 15 range, just like Rodgers is. So if you give Rodgers the same thing that you gave Hurts 2 years ago, the same thing you gave Darnold last year in Seattle, with an elite defense, good offensive play caller, and that offense is just good. It doesn't even have to be great. It just has to be like pretty darn good. And then the defense is great to elite. You're going to have a chance to win playoff games and go on a run. Bernard says if somehow Aaron Rodgers don't get first ballot, then Drew Brees should not have gotten in my opinion. Yeah, man. Listen, there's a lot of people in the media that hate Aaron Rodgers. So it would not shock me, kind of like Bill Belichick. There's a lot of people in the media that hate Bill Belichick. He didn't get in first ballot. That's a travesty. If Bill Belichick's not first ballot Hall of Famer, nobody is. But, yeah, I think that we'll see, man. I would not be surprised if Rodgers is not first ballot, because there's going to be a lot of media people that want to spite him, and they know that would bother him if he wasn't a first ballot guy. $5 from Bernard. Final question here. Never mind. That was the last question. So big shout out to Reed. Give it up for Reed in the comments section for filling in for Ponzi today.
Shout out to you guys.
It was really a fun show today. It really was. He's got a date tonight, though. He's a little chef today. He's making dinner for a little somebody today. So best of luck to you on your date there, Reed. Thank you so much for joining us today and putting in the hard work here on Steelers Talk. Thank you guys for joining us here for today's live show. The next time we'll be live, just so you guys know, we probably won't be live until Wednesday next week, Wednesday night. I think we might go live for a shorter live show because we're going to be live Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We're going to be live a lot next week during the NFL draft. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button, turn on those notifications so you always know when new videos come out from us here at Steelers Talk. Enjoy your weekend. I'll see you guys next time. And until then, here we go, Steelers.